Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Logical Plausible Probable. I'm your host, John Maddox, and tonight we're having another stream you just won't want to miss. If you got what it takes, click that link, or prepare yourself, for this arena is not for the weak. Now, let the mental combat begin, but always make sure your arguments are LPP.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to After Show for the TJump versus Ronny debate. Everybody should be coming on over from MDD right now, and hopefully we will have a good discussion about the madness that we just witnessed over there, and for a freaking 2 hours and 15 minutes or so of just very interesting conversations, some meltdowns, some flip outs. The amount of ad hominems was off the charts. It was pretty epic. But for everybody who is coming in for the first time to one of my after shows, basically how it works is, for the first 45 minutes to an hour or so, we'll kind of, as people come in to the panel, give about 45 seconds to a minute, kind of share their thoughts about who won, who lost, best zingers, best comebacks, things that really stuck out to you about the debate. And then we can, nobody new has joined and we're just sitting here talking, everybody's done with their, round. Then we'll kind of go into open discussion and, go back and forth. But then if somebody new hops in, everybody needs to shut up. We'll let that person air their thoughts about the debate. And then when they get done, then we can go back into general conversation. Now, very often these will end up being a bit of a dumpster fire. So in line with that, I always like to make sure to have something that can enable us to, just be on full awareness when we go into dumpster fire mode. So if you start seeing this happening, it means that the dumpster fire has begun. And there's no telling how long that will take on tonight, because wow, the debate itself was a epic dumpster fire on so many different levels. Okay, so link is pinned in the side chat if anybody wants to come on into the panel. We got one person backstage. Who else wants to join? Remember, you don't have to have a computer. All you need is your phone. Don't have to be on cam. Just have your microphone activated, and then I can let you into the studio, and then we can share your thoughts. So it's pretty fun, and hopefully we'll have some good conversations going on. Also, there's a poll in the side chat as well about who won the debate. Was it TJump? Was it Ronny? Or it was a tie? Go ahead and share your thoughts if you watched the debate, and I'm very interested to see how that turns out. We'll probably let the poll go until midnight Central Time, so for another 41 minutes, and then we'll kind of see what the audience has said in relation to who won this conversation. Okay, so let's get to it. Simus Funk is in the backstage. He coming in and share his thoughts. Like I said, anyone wants to come in, join the panel, and talk about the debate, click that link in side chat, and we will get things going. What's up, Simus? Welcome to the after show. What are your thoughts about the debate tonight?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I've got a couple of things. How do I address you? Is it LPP or John, or what do you prefer?
It doesn't matter. LPP, John doesn't make any difference to me.
Okay, thanks. I like your sense of humour. Let me just get that straight out of the way, because I've always wanted to say that to you.
I appreciate it.
No worries. I'm a funny guy myself, so hey, Okay, so I thought logically or philosophically, I thought TJump's points were correct. There were a lot of fallacies coming from Ronny, who I thought was a charming guy and would be a pleasure to talk to. I didn't think that. I thought that some of TJump's responses were just, nailhead reactions and responses where they just didn't need to be. Even if you're frustrated with somebody making a bad argument, there's no need to really go to insults. That's something which I don't think should be encouraged. I know it can be frustrating talking to atheists and talking to theists if you're on the other side. But I don't see any reason why we should have to resort to that. You can call the argument stupid. You don't have to call the person stupid. Those are two different things. And I felt every time I see that happen in the debate, I feel that we've all lost, both sides of this great debate community that we're in. But philosophically, I thought Ronny made quite a few fallacies in his arguments, and in fact, he actually gave the debate away at the end there by saying, "Yes, I am making a God of the gaps argument." And I think, well, that really says it all. And I think if TJump had really focused in on saying that there are possible alternative explanations, then he clearly would have won the debate more easily and didn't need to go down the route of trying to demean the opposition personally. So that's pretty much how I think about it.
Well, yeah, I mean the point you made about the level of frustration and such. I mean, as anybody's ever seen my debates. I mean, in my debate with TJump, he and I got a little bit fiery. Not to the level. Actually, I've had more than one debate with him, but not to the level of ad hominems that were happening tonight. We had with TJump and myself, we had a slightly lower
Sorry,
level.
LP, can I interrupt you? I don't think they were ad hominems. I think they were straight insults.
Well, true. True.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, it was pretty bad. The one in my debate with TJump where he said that I know more than you about everything is what he said to me, and it's just like, okay, so you just admitted that you didn't understand what I said, but you then followed up claiming that you knew more than me about everything, but you don't know what I know. So that's a just astonishing contradiction, right? So to your point in relation to some of the philosophical and logical potential errors from Ronny, right? I would say that maybe in the way that he worded things, he might have been off a little bit, but the underlying concepts he was putting forth, I don't think were invalid. And he was putting things forward in a much more layman understanding perspective. I don't mean necessarily from his perspective. I'm talking about from the way he was framing it for the audience, right? And one of the things that I've noticed a lot of the atheists do is they try to get in. He kind of Ronnie kind of led into this at the very end, but he was saying, you love to go down this semantic rabbit hole, and very often, I've talked about this many times, very often it's like they want to argue semantic interpretation of one word in a paragraph. That if you look at it from the context of the whole paragraph, is very apparent to what it means. But then if you try and pull it down inside of 3 words of a clause of a compound sentence, and you're like, well, it doesn't make any sense now. That's a contradiction. And it's like, well,
Sure.
You have to read the whole freaking sentence, dude. And then look at the paragraph, the preceding and following sentences in order to reach the overall context. And then from that perspective, is your claim that I'm just way off or it's a fallacy, or whatever, is it still true? And I'm not saying that in some cases it's not. I mean, I'm talking about very often I observe that, and then it's like when you pull back or zoom out a little bit, it's like, dude, what the hell are you even arguing about right now? Like, this is dumb.
Maybe. I mean, that's certainly going to be true in some places of some arguments, for sure, 100%. The one I noticed it again towards the end was when defining the word supernatural, which it seemed to me was quite important to the debate. And Ronny argued that it was of God. But of course, if he defines supernatural of God, then his choices of science or of God, door 1 or door 2, is begging the question when he says it must be door 2. So I do think he showed a little naivete in using some of these arguments in these terms, especially when it came to the Munchausen trilemma, right? So saying it's either epistemological or ontological, and only God can be ontological. That seems to me a straightforward fallacy. When he says an infinite regress is impossible, I don't think he ever gave a contradiction for the impossibility of an infinite regress, or at least to my mind, he didn't. So I mean, these are the types of things. These are the types of things I'm pointing at when I say he lost the philosophical argument. He may have won a moral argument against TJump in this case, though.
Makes sense. Okay, up next we've got Bubblegum Gun, and then it'll be Duvid, and then James Wolfe. So, Bubblegum, what's up, man? Welcome to the stream. How you doing? What'd you think about tonight's debate?
Oh, that was epic. I think Ronny said everything that needed to be said. I think call him those insults. He needed that. TJump needed to be called out. He needed to be called out of his face making. That needs to stop. And they should probably cut off his camera from now on until he stops doing that. But even despite, when Ronny was admitting there was a God of the Gas, but he was stating that's the only explanation you can come to, because TJump cannot appeal to the supernatural, and that's what he was doing. But he was just reluctant to admit that's what he was doing. It just didn't click with him. He's so oblivious. Yeah, Ronny totally won that 100%.
All right, appreciate that. And remember, folks, there is the poll inside chat right now. Make sure you put in your votes as to where things are. Right now, we're 51 votes in. And right now, Ronny is leading at 55% to 27, and then 18% of people are saying there's a tie. Interesting. I'm very fascinated to see how this ends up, what the results end up being. What's up, David? Welcome to the stream. Were you at the debate? If so, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I caught the debate. Yeah, thanks. I see you've been active doing shows again. Good for you. Yeah, it was pretty poor quality debate. I was curious because I'm familiar with Ronny Cameron from previous debates on other topics. I was curious his position on this. I guess he'd been a host on Heel Turn and debated topics like racial or national topics. So I was kind of surprised that he was going to be debating pro-theism. So I was curious how he was going to argue that. And it looked like he had prepared pretty professional, had his arguments down. And so it was ironic that TJump took the approach. So it was really a low quality debate. So I was thinking the psychoanalysis may be more interesting, that if TJump is trying to pivot towards like e-celebrity, so he just kind of gets into character and does his thing and didn't take the debate that seriously. And Ronny Cameron was going the opposite angle from trying to revive his minor e-celebrity career and take a more serious approach. So it was almost ironic that there, if people it's familiar with Ronny's earlier work, there was almost like a reversal of character where he was like the serious intellectual, and TJump was the immature behavior. So I found that ironic. It would have been more interesting to hear the actual arguments and go into detail. So that's why I said I thought the psychoanalysis of the debaters might be more interesting than the actual arguments that they didn't really go over.
No, that's a great point, and yeah, I agree with you. It was very interesting for sure. I mean, the amount of meltdown that I was clearly visible from TJump. It was. I was having my mind blown because I've seen him go into meltdowns before, but not to that extent for that period of time. Usually, it's like a flare, and then calms down a little bit. But it was just like almost from the word go was in a rather interesting state. Okay, so up next we got James Wolfe, and then Leophilius, and then Godzilla Freak. So what's up, James? Welcome to the stream. How you doing? I know I saw you over at the debate in side chat, so share your thoughts. What do you think about the interesting confrontation between Ronny and TJump?
Yeah, how you doing, guys? Sorry, I can't stay too long because I'm at work. I'm just on a break. But what I wanted to I thought I'd just contribute a couple of thoughts. Sorry, I just want to do a mic test because sometimes this phone doesn't always work on StreamYard. Can you guys all hear me?
You're good.
Okay,
man.
cool. So yeah, it's a bit sad when the conduct of the debate is kind of overshadows everything else. But I just want to touch on a few things. Look, I thought TJump's arguments, they were probably, I couldn't really fault them, despite how he carried on. I thought that Ronny, I kind of was a bit sympathetic towards his arguments on an intuitive level. I thought I think he put forth a good deistic argument. It's about as good a deistic argument as you can put forth, and it sort of resonates on a kind of intuitive level. But again, he kind of, I didn't, and I know you touched on this a moment ago, Bubble. He really hammers in on TJump's mannerisms, and I know, as somebody who who's got quasi-autistic traits myself, I kind of sometimes do things that don't necessarily reflect how I'm feeling, or they don't mean to be offensive. Having said that, TJump's completely insulting the guy all the way through, so I suppose you can kind of think that it's somewhat reflective of how he's projecting himself towards Ronny. But yeah, also from Ronny, I really hated the ableist slurs he was invoking. I really enjoyed his debates. I enjoyed his arguments, even though they were fallacious. I believe he was invoking argument from ignorance and special pleading fallacies. But I really enjoyed his presentation. But I couldn't stand the ableist slurs. But yeah, I'll leave it there. I'll stay on for a couple more minutes and contribute if you guys want to. Yeah. Anyway, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts there, James. All right, up next we got Leophilius and then Godzilla Freak. What's up, Leo? Welcome to the stream. I saw you having meltdown, not in the same context, but you were clearly having some issues with what was going on in the debate inside chat over there. So share your thoughts, my friend.
Yeah, the problem is that TJump he just knows fuck all about philosophy. He has no idea how to substantively engage with any of the arguments. I mean, I definitely think Ronny won that one just in virtue of the fact that he conducted himself significantly better. The thing is, though, his arguments, though, weren't really that profound, and I don't think they're that difficult to respond to, and I struggle to understand how TJump struggled to provide substantive responses to them, because they really weren't difficult arguments, but Ronny seemed to understand his position better than TJump did, and Ronny seemed to also he seemed to understand the objections that TJump was giving. So I credit him for that. He seemed much more prepared for the discussion at hand than TJump did. So I think, again, in virtue of that and the fact that I just think he conducted himself better, he seemed much more mature and willing to actually engage in a debate that he certainly won. And again, that being said, I don't think that his arguments were all that profound, and I don't think that there aren't a myriad of substantive responses to those arguments found in the relevant philosophical literature.
Right on. Appreciate your thoughts there, Leo. All right, Godzilla Freak, welcome to the stream. What are your thoughts on the debate? And folks in the side chat, we've currently got 3 slots open. Anybody wants to come in and share their thoughts? Link is pinned in the top of side chat. Just click that. Come on in. You can do it from your phone or from a computer or an iPad for that matter. But just click on in. Don't be afraid. You're welcome to come and share your thoughts. Go ahead, Godzilla.
Or if I'm being honest, like if it's a TJump debate and I don't know the other person, I don't really care very much about it. I saw like a little bit, but I definitely didn't see very much of it. From what I saw though, TJump was just going like full meltdown mode. So that was interesting.
By the way, your daughter messaged me that you were gonna like co-host with your ex-wife. I was like, what's that about?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been married, so I'm not really sure what that's about. I think somebody is
okay. Am I getting
trying to
trolled or
play
something?
me. Probably.
All right.
And yeah, just don't bring that stuff up. I'm not sure what that is. What's going on with that?
Okay,
Somebody keeps randomly popping in and out saying that kind of crap. I've literally never been married, so how I have an ex-wife is just dumb. Go ahead, Simon.
So I'll bring us back if I can. Leo, did you think that Ronny made multiple fallacious arguments?
I think that largely he was just presenting arguments from. I mean, he pretty much at one point seemed to admit, well, if science can't explain it, then in virtue of that alone, it must be supernatural, which is just textbook argument from ignorance.
That's correct.
I was honestly just more blown away by the complete idiocy spewing forth from TJump in response to the rather simple arguments that Ronny was laying out. So I wasn't paying full attention to like I wasn't like making a note of any potential fallacies, but I would say both of their arguments were replete with them.
Well, because Ronny was making a god of quote unquote god of gaps. He was saying God did
Another
it.
fallacy, yeah.
But when TJump answer to the universe was the fields did it, that's no different than saying God did it. So he was
I think in that instance I would agree with that.
Well, and I think people forget, and I think on the whole, argument from ignorance, fallacies and such, people are talking about because Ronny clarified this a couple of times, and he made I'm trying to remember his exact wording, but it was the position he was basically taking was that at some point you come to the dichotomy of either God did it or something else did it, right? Like that was the end of the day. So, and basically what he was saying was, if that is true, and science and nature didn't do it, then the only rational conclusion would be the other side of the dichotomy, right? That God did it, was the point that he was making, and he wasn't necessarily saying that we have proven. I remember him saying multiple times, like, you can't prove this, right? But he was just saying from a rational perspective, if the natural cause is not the logical conclusion, then by default the supernatural would be. So I think you guys are a little bit off on he was just appealing to argument for ignorance or God of the gaps in that context.
I was shocked. His arguments were standard. He gave 5 arguments, and all of those, if I consider myself a seasoned debater on the topic, all 5 of his arguments are standard arguments. I mean, you could disagree with them, but I would assume he did a little bit of research, and it may be his first time debating. I don't know if anyone follows Politically Provoked, and I was actually kind of surprised because usually he's debating in favor of an ethno state, so it was ironic to hear him as arguing on behalf of God. But
I did not know that.
If anyone follows Politically Provoked,
I remember him. Yeah, I think I was there.
That would explain why there were so many philosophical howlers in the
Yeah,
whole
I
thing.
think he even used to like co-host a program with Richard Spencer. I don't know if that's how he got caught on modern day debate, but it's likely his first time that he was doing a debate on this topic. And it's interesting that he took a non-denominational, like he wasn't Christian. I don't know if he's like a Apollonian or something, or
He said he was a
pagan.
deist.
But
Well, that's expected.
these were all standard. Almost all of his arguments go back to the Greeks. I don't know how well he researched it, but he probably did, relatively decent research, came up with the arguments, tried his best to argue, and was, did a relatively good job. And that's why I thought maybe the way TJump treated him was because of his previous debate appearance, although it's unclear if TJump was familiar with him from before or not. But I thought it was interesting that he didn't take a Christian approach. He took a pure rationalist approach.
Yeah. Well, rightly or wrongly, that kind of. Sorry, go on.
Just real quick, hang on. $10 super chat from Elosha. The problem with that specific topic is that we're asked to speak of God in his absence. It can't be done. It leaves the theists with one hand tied behind their back. That's an interesting point. How would you disagree with that? I think actually, go ahead. James, is that you trying to say something? And then
just that right or wrong, that certainly colours my impression of the guy if he's been knocking around with Richard Spencer and whatever. But also I just wanted to say goodbye, guys, because I get back to work. So thanks for having me, John. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the good points, James. It's good to meet you.
Godzilla, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, just to address the point, you often find it with like sort of, what would you call it, like the ultra-nationalist sect of the dissident right, where they're basically never Christian. They're always some kind of like ancient style pagan or like a deist. It's very rare that they'll actually be like openly Christian, or they'll say like, oh, I believe in Christian values, but I'm not a Christian. It's very common. You see that all the time.
European history says slightly different, but fair enough. Maybe in the modern world it's
I'm saying
different.
like in these days, online.
There was something I wanted to say about the whole the sort of the dichotomy, the God or not God dichotomy. At the end of the day, I think it's just a trivial dichotomy. It's like saying everything is either blue or it's not blue, or everything is either hot or it's not hot. I mean, it's just I think that's kind of trivial. Also, I think the only way that one can conclude that some explanation must be supernatural is if they exhaust all natural explanations, and I just don't think that anybody's going to be capable of doing that, because the only way that one could universally exhaust some category like that is going to be in virtue of some like categorical statement. But most of these kinds of categorical statements are going to be, deductive in nature. They're not going to really be empirical. So at that point, then it's not really like an empirical explanation through which you're exhausting that category. And I don't think that in logic we can exhaust naturalism as a category, or natural things as a category with respect to explanations. I would personally argue that it seems to be the only category with which we even have any meaningful explanations at all.
Where do you draw the line?
Argument? I mean, was he really just doing? I mean, Jay Dyer is probably the most famous argue, but it's just a different form of the transcendental argument, and he may not be steeped in classical philosophy to know the origins or history of the arguments. But I mean, it seemed, is that how you interpreted that argument? Is just a form of the transcendental argument?
Wait, what argument is a form of the transcendental argument?
Ronny's.
That science, that his main argument, though, really the only one of them that they argued, was that if you use science, you have to use the rules of science, as opposed to God giving at least the possibility of there being rules beyond the rules that science allows for.
I guess I don't know. I'd have to hear more of his position on that.
His basic argument. Science can't answer all the questions.
Argument. I think that in virtue of him being a deist, he's probably not running a transcendental argument that's usually utilized by Christians. But I mean, I can't rule out that may have been what he's trying to do.
quick
all
timeout,
these
guys.
arguments really
Hey, guys,
come from the ancient Greeks.
Guys, quick timeout. So Mark Reed's joined us. You can have the mic here in a second. For where he talks, though, Richie Torres, MMA fighter. Yes. Super chat, thank you so much. He says, how does the atheist even justify the preconditions of intelligibility to even debate? Well, that's a good question. And I think that all of the atheists who make it beyond meltdown with Darth Dawkins have to answer that question as well. It's always fascinating to when they get into the precondition of intelligibility, the creature creator distinctions and all those fun things. It's always interesting to go down that rabbit hole. But everybody, let's let Mark share his thoughts on the debate. I saw him inside chat over there, so we know he was there. Mark, what are your thoughts?
I'd just like to address David after that, because I think he made a good point.
Yeah. So I got to say, I think TJump's kind of frustrating me. His behavior was absolutely terrible. I would call a theist out on it, so I'm going to call an atheist out on it. There's no, you shouldn't, especially the sort of threat of physical violence, whether that was implied or whatever. It's just not cool. I think that if you are resorting to insults and ad hominems, you kind of have already lost the debate. You haven't presented arguments. You're basically falling back on yelling, screaming, and bad behavior. However, I do think that Ronny was, throwing out some ableist slurs as well. I wish I could tell him that I was disappointed, but if he watches this, just because TJump was doing it doesn't mean you should too. And yeah, I think that was terrible. I didn't like Ronny's arguments. I think that sort of the special pleading is apparent. I think that the other one was sort of a God of the gaps, which he sort of freely acknowledged was a God of the gaps. I think they are terrible arguments because you could name something else, anything else, special plead for it, say, magical unicorn, say it doesn't have to have a cause, put that in the special pleading role, you have the same outcome. Same with God of the gaps, you could put just about anything in there and say, well, because we don't know, we prefer the explanation that we do know. The really weird thing that I was getting was that Ronny was sort of, this isn't satisfactory and that isn't satisfactory, and that's fine for your beliefs. I get that, but it doesn't really address the truth of the matter. Saying something's not satisfactory isn't really an argument for it. It's just an appeal to your personal preferences. It doesn't hold a lot of weight. Well, not with me anyway. It didn't find it convincing. Yeah, and sort of the weird idea that science must require an explanation. There's a problem there. There's a big problem there. So we know that scientifically we don't have all the explanations. We know that's true. Obviously, that's apparent to anybody. But how do you find out if something doesn't require an explanation? Because you can't distinguish between an explanation science hasn't found and an explanation that isn't there. So I think that his reasoning on that was sort of flawed and yeah, I would agree that generally and normatively during science we always find explanations, but there's the problem there. How do you find if something has an explanation if you haven't found it, or does not have an explanation if you haven't found it? Because we just assume we haven't found it.
Well, I don't think it. Oh, sure, go ahead.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'll end there. That was just my quick thoughts. Thank you.
So quick interjection on this. So I keep hearing this stuff about ableist slurs, right? So I decided to look them up, and I know the one you're referring to, obviously, but it came from Ronny. But I would argue that, and from what I'm reading here, right? So, quote, common examples of ableist language are words like lame, dumb, retarded, blind, deaf, idiot, imbecile, nut, psycho, and spaz. So I would actually say that TJump he listed out dumb a bazillion times, idiot for sure. I mean, there was a whole bunch of stuff that was in there. So and where I'm going with all this is I am in no way, shape, form, or fashion suggesting that Ronny did not say things, but it was like in response to high levels of insult.
I think
before he responded in kind. And
I definitely agree with
that. Does TJump know what he's doing? Would TJump have actually gotten a boxing match
to TJump just sitting there and
I
just
have no idea.
Well, I'm
It
saying,
does-
like,
I
Ronny
think
used
that,
to
I
stream
think
with
that
Worsky.
some slurs
Is
are
my
worse
mic?
than
Am I
others.
audible? Can anybody hear me?
Yeah,
I was making the point that Ronny actually used to
I
stream
was
with
also
Worsky.
trying to-
He probably would have met up and fought him. I mean, I don't picture TJump. I picture TJump as actually like a trash talker. Maybe he's escalating it, and so I actually picture that as Ronny choosing to de-escalate it. But it could have ended up like a Worsky situation where next thing you know, they're having like a celebrity boxing match. And I don't know if you picture TJump, maybe TJump, that's his next move, and he's going to be doing celebrity boxing matches. But
And listen, I may have to switch the poll over to, would you financially support a TJump versus Ronny celebrity boxing match that is live streamed? Like, how much? Like $5, $10? Like, how much would you pay to watch this? And,
as a Brit, I've got to say, never challenge anybody with a Scottish flag in the background to a fight. Okay.
Yeah, I think Ronny used to stream with Worsky. Like, he probably would actually. I mean, my interpretation was Ronny chose to de-escalate when like TJump was like, I would actually slap you. That my interpretation is Ronny is probably a person who's comfortable with violence, and TJump is not. Although that's just speculation. I don't know.
Maybe.
And that Ronny chose to de-escalate at that moment and be like, I think TJump is actually just autistic and doesn't mean what he's saying. But it's tough. It's it's honestly tough to know just watching it on the internet. So it was kind of surprising.
So Richie Torres says,
Leo
I'll train both. My fees are reasonable.
Okay, no, Riches, how about you, Richie? You train one of them, and then we have Raw Matt train the other one, and then they can duke it out, right?
That would be an interesting something interesting. Okay, so Leo,
I know TJump's a bit of a fitness freak, so I wouldn't want to bet on either of them, to be honest.
He's on his couch all day playing video games. That is such a lie.
It seemed out of character. Saying like
he runs every day.
No, but I'm saying Ronny is.
I run every day.
Ronny was actually active in IRL movements. If TJump's just an internet personality, and now he's arguing with people who's actually active in maybe out of place.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you that TJump's behavior was very unbecoming of anybody in a debate, let alone somebody that was getting paid to debate.
Well, that's why he could have just been in character like E-Celeb, and there's a difference between activists.
A terrible character if that's the case.
Well, no,
Jody says Scott's can't. Jody is like straight up issuing the SmackDown slap on Scott. Says Scott's can't fight. Oh man, Scott's everywhere getting triggered right now.
Really?
The kilts are being donned as we speak.
Irish can't.
They're about to march over the border with bagpipes and.
You don't want to get to Glasgow on a Saturday night.
No.
The Irish can fight. That's all that matters.
Well, I was surprised that Ronny chose to de-escalate it, so props to him for doing that. And I was surprised that TJump escalated it to like violent threats.
TJump does that when he's losing. Like when TJump doesn't, when it's obvious that TJump is sort of like in over his head, where he doesn't really understand the subject material beyond the first 3 sentences of a Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy article, he starts to, you moron, you absolute moron. Like that's what he does. So the minute you like doing that, all that means is that he's not understanding whatever it is.
Escalating to physical threats, is that something that TJump has done before? I've never seen him do that before.
I don't know. I don't really watch a lot of his streams, but it wouldn't surprise me in all honesty.
I've watched a few.
Well, no, I've seen him before. I've never heard him make a physical
I've never heard him make physical threats.
So that actually surprised me.
I think that just shows.
I've heard him insult plenty of people.
I heard him insult.
I've never heard him make
physical threat.
threats.
I've never heard him make a physical threat. And it was surprising. Am I the only one saying that?
Well, no,
I do.
But it was definitely surprising. I think a big portion of that is, how it escalated to that point was most of the people that debate him let's let him keep interrupting over and over again. And Ronny didn't. Same thing in my debate with him. It's like, dude, I mean, it was so funny. Last night, Big Bad Mama edited a compilation together of me being mean to atheists that I debated. And one of them was with TJump. And it was TJump was attempting to do the same thing with me, and I pushed back on him just like Ronny did. And finally, I was like, okay, we can either like go to freaking timed responses or not continue. This is ridiculous at this point. But where I'm going with that is the Ronny responded and kept pushing back and pushing back and pushing back. I don't know if TJump knows how to deal with people that just don't cave to him being overwhelming and just like, shut up. You're done. You're stupid. No, you're an idiot. Just shut up. And he acts like he's like the king of the freaking room. And it's like, it's called a freaking debate, bro. Like you're not.
He really doesn't know how to handle that. Like, look at his debate. The last time I saw him like perform the way that he did in the debate that he just had tonight was when he's had discussions with Jack Gangstrike on physicalism, when he had a discussion with Ask Yourself on his moral ideology, his discussion with Trent Doherty on Capturing Christianity, which you actually have to watch on TJump's channel because it's not on Capturing Christianity's channel anymore. TJump doesn't actually like resort to calling Doherty like a moron and an idiot, but it's obvious that TJump had no clue. But I guess that's what happens when you're somebody who thinks that they understand epistemology and you don't, and you're up against a literal professional epistemologist.
Well, I mean, Ronnie's not a debater like that. He's an IRL ethno-nationalist activist, or at least used to be. And he's been
really
on
no, David. Leo is referring.
Ethan Ralph and saying he used to stream.
Yeah, I do have to ask why do we keep bringing up that he's a white nationalist? I don't think that's really relevant to the topic of the debate that they had.
He wouldn't be talking to me like this if we were face to face. He was serious.
That's cool. I don't really think we care.
TJump was like, yes, I would beat you up. And I think Ronnie was like, this guy's joking. He's not really challenging me to a fight. Otherwise, he would have escalated it. And so I think it was an anomaly. And I'm saying TJump is
very often people who know that in the real world they would destroy somebody I'm talking about from a physical confrontation. Very often they are the ones that de-escalate things because it's like, yes. I'm not prepared.
My read then that Ronnie's the one who de-escalated it.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying in the kind of, from my opinion, my read on the situation was it's like the kid in the 6th grader going and talking trash to the football, the lineman on the high school team and being like, I'm going to whoop your ass, dude. And the lineman's like, yeah, okay, buddy, sure. Let's just calm down. You know what? You're right. You're right. You probably could beat me. Right. And of course, in that guy's mind, it's like, I could literally sit on this kid and crush him, but I'm going to just we're going to calm this down because I'm not going to hit this little kid. So let's just not get it to that point where he starts trying to attack me kind of thing. Okay. So House of Comments has joined us. What's up, man? Good to see you. It's been a while. Welcome to the stream. What are your thoughts on the debate tonight?
Hey, not too bad. I've only seen bits of it, so I haven't seen the whole thing. But yeah, I think, who was it just said that? Leo was right with Trent. I think the other thing with TJump is if you watch him with the other person who ran circles around him was James Anderson on Logic. And those cases,
I think, not surprising. TJump doesn't understand.
He tends to be well behaved if there's someone he's not winning an argument with. But if something gets a bit testy, like with Daniel, he just goes into full spurt, like meltdown, which is just weak. I think. But it's my 2 cents there. So that, but yeah.
Well, I think TJump was right about a couple of things, namely the dichotomy that Ronny was drawing between door 1 and door 2 was basically the dichotomy between epistemology and ontology, and that's just begging the question. So there's that. And then secondly, TJump pointed out that there were other ontological arguments that scientists could have, and that's true. And
but
Ronny denied that being the case. So.
Yeah, but those
what does that mean, though? To have other ontological arguments? I don't understand that.
Well, it
doesn't have to be God. Yeah, that's what that means.
Ronny called him out of this, and he said he was only providing a hybrid. Which, after Ronny made this point, TJump immediately provided a hybrid, and he just utterly failed.
So, Bubbles, what was the dichotomy that you can say that he was saying?
He was saying you can't. Okay, you have a choice of the supernatural, the non-supernatural, and if you're going to provide a third option, which is just a hybrid, you're already appealing to the supernatural. So you can't do that from a atheist naturalist perspective.
Is that the dichotomy, supernatural
That's not
or
what he said, but
non-supernatural?
that's an interpretation of what he said.
So
That's
why
exactly
couldn't it
what
be
he said.
Hey guys,
supernatural but
real
not
quick, we got
God?
a super chat from Franco. What's up, Franco? Thanks so much for your $10 super chat. He said, I found it weird that Ronnie just accepted a supernatural framework for explaining origin is special pleading because he didn't require it to have an explanation as opposed to other natural ones. And that's a good point. Sorry, go ahead, guys.
Well, in that case,
Yeah.
the danger is that his explanation was axiological, and that again
Well-
would be special, would be circular.
Yeah, so the problem with Bubbles' thing is that you've got supernatural versus non-supernatural, which I agree that non-supernatural would probably, conform to natural, obviously. But supernatural doesn't automatically say a god. So,
Wait,
like
are
you
you-
pointing out, you can have many
Okay.
things that are supernatural. Like
TJump
ghosts
made-
and sort
No,
of
no,
things.
no, because as an atheist, TJump cannot appeal to any supernatural or hybrid of a supernatural. Because
Why
any
not?
Yeah, you can.
No, you can't, because
Yes,
any
you
Q
can.
supernatural.
All atheism
Any-
is
any-
a claim about gods. But you
Yeah.
could believe in other
All-
supernatural things and
all
be an atheist.
supernatural things would presuppose God.
No, they
and
don't.
And for atheists to say atheists can believe in the supernatural is absurd, because you would now have to propose an explanation for ghosts. So
Does-
what
does
explanation?
psychic
What
powers-
naturalistic explanation would you have?
Well,
for
but if
ghosts?
they believe it's supernatural, they're not going to think it as a naturalistic explanation.
Correct.
But that doesn't necessitate God as an explanation. You're going to have to give an argument for that.
You're gonna have to give an explanation.
No.
That is
You're
not
the one-
God.
You're the one claiming that if something is supernatural, then it must necessarily reference God. What's
Yes.
the argument for that?
Bubbles, I have a question for you. When you're finished with that, I want to ask this question. Go.
Okay. All supernatural things would presuppose God, because there's no other explanation for this. What are you gonna give? A burrito did it?
Who said that supernatural
Okay,
things
can I ask my
necessitate
question
an
now?
explanation?
Can I
What's
please
the
ask my
argument for
question?
that? Yeah, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Bubbles, what about our psychic powers supernatural?
Okay, how are you gonna explain psychic powers?
Jesus.
Psychic powers, yes, they are supernatural by default. Yes, if anyone has a psychic power, it comes from demons, mate.
So
It comes from
Professor,
the demonic side.
Just let me address that.
Well, it
Professor
comes from the
X
spirit.
is a X-Men mutant with psychic powers.
Oh my god, that's freaking fantasy, dude.
Yeah, that's still supernatural.
You just said that.
What's your point?
What's your point?
Bro, that's based on freaking fantasy. They might
Yeah,
as well
but
say a
still-
burrito did it.
Still
I have
supernatural. Like,
proposed an explanation for it.
like
Bro,
Harry Potter
you're
is
talk-
fantasy, but the
Bro, you're
stuff
talking
they do
about
is still
comic books.
supernatural. That's still supernatural
Leo,
stuff they're doing.
Leo,
But they don't
listen.
ever talk about a god.
Leo,
Well, I think
listen.
within the context
Leo,
of Harry Potter,
if you're gonna say a comic book
natural.
is a perfect explanation, that's no different than saying the burrito I wrote in my comic book as the explanation is a perfect legitimate explanation. That's absurd nonsense.
No, I have no idea what you're even talking about. Look, you made
You
the
are
statement-
literally talking about
Wait,
comic books, dude.
Sorry,
You're
I'm
literally
trying
talking about
I'm-
comic
excuse
books
me,
as
excuse
an
me,
actual argument.
Excuse me. Well,
Okay,
Harry
no,
Potter.
well, I do
Harry
have an
Potter's
objection.
not a comic book, so I don't know. That's what I mentioned, so I don't know what you're talking about there. But anyway, you're the one. You're the one. You're the one. You're the one.
Let
who
him
made
explain himself. Just
Bubbles.
be quiet. Let this guy explain himself. It's funny as.
You're the one who made the claim that the supernatural necessitates reference to God, and then you said, well, because what else is going to explain it? But that's just a textbook argument from ignorance. You're saying, well, because I can't think of anything else that would explain it, therefore it must be God. But that's you're just
So
committing a
what-
fallacy here. So,
so
you,
what-
what,
Can
what-
I
what-
ask him a
Leo,
question?
so what, Leo,
I'm sorry
is
to
it
cut you off. I know
supernatural?
you guys are having a
Does
thing
the
at the moment.
supernatural
Can I
explain
finish,
the
please?
supernatural,
Can I
Leo?
finish,
This-
please?
Can I
finish?
ask him a question? Just one
Yeah,
question. I just want to ask one question,
finished,
please.
when I'm finished, you can ask him your
Okay,
question.
all right. Sorry.
So, what's the argument there? Because you still haven't given a valid argument. So, what's
Okay.
the valid argument?
Okay, Leo. To say the supernatural explains the supernatural is freaking logic.
Who said that? Who said the supernatural explains that? I don't know what you're
Are
talking
you gonna
about.
say?
I don't-
So you, Leo, I'm not done talking.
I'm not saying anything. I don't know why you keep going.
I don't know
trying
why
to
you're
paint
cutting
this
me.
as
I don't know why you're
me
cutting me
saying-
off.
All right.
I'm cutting
Everybody's
you off because you're
everybody
not
calm down.
responding
Okay,
to what I'm
listen,
saying at
listen,
all.
Listen, everybody,
God
calm down.
forbid this type of behavior was bad enough with just two people talking, let alone a whole panel.
All right, so listen, I'm gonna have to interject. We're gonna calm down. So we're gonna have a 2-minute timeout. Everybody, just take deep breaths. Determine what your next thoughts are gonna be. George is $10 super chat. Thanks so much. George says, for the benefit of the skeptics, can you play this 2-minute
Just
video?
give me time, John, to get in there and ask a question later.
We're on timeout, and I was about to say, when we come back, Jason
Sorry.
hasn't had a chance to talk. He's joined the panel. He's going to share his thoughts on the debate and can ask his question, and then we'll go back to the discussion. So this is on real-time geologic formations. I believe this is from the stream that they did earlier today over on Standing for Truth. Let's see what this is. Here we go.
What a difference. And then you can cover it all up and say, I've got a buried undercut valley. And you'd be totally, absolutely wrong. In fact, let's show this video now, and you can watch it happen yourself. So we have our sediment pouring in from one current. We have a fountain of the deep blasting up from underneath. You watch what happens when the two of them interact. In case you're not fast enough, you might actually like to note that the heavy particles end up usually on the top of the flows, not on the bottom. The bottle experiment simply is fake. Look how it sinks now. Sinks because it's totally saturated. Exactly what you would have got in Noah's flood, which is purpose, what does Peter say? To catastrophize the world. It was cataclysmic. Wow. In fact, when you're looking at all of that sinking that's going on there, you would say this represents processes that took ages. Now, it took a couple of minutes while the video was running, and look, you're now going to fill in the whole valley. And, well, I'm sure you've seen rift valleys like that, but in reality, they weren't rift valleys. They were motion that was produced simply by the water, while all the other beds were soft. Well, let's move on to the next one now. Here's the result. Yep, I'm sure you can go to South Africa and find sediments like that. You can find them in America. You can see them on the island.
We can still hear it, but we can't see the video.
That was where he said to go ahead and end it. So, well, that's pretty interesting. It was kind of fascinating to watch that happen in real time for me. And I would argue that a lot of the pictures you see of the sediment layers kind of look very similar to that. So that's a very interesting real-time experiment. Okay, Jason, go ahead, share your thoughts on tonight's debate, and then you can ask a question.
I'm not going to share thoughts on tonight's debate. You know, I'm going to do my usual thing.
Jason, hang on,
Sorry.
calm down.
Sorry.
So after Jason gets done, then we'll go back into general conversation. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, this is what I want to say, and this is very simple. These people here keep, and I keep hearing it, like indirectly saying that, you know, we're pseudoscience and they're science and we get everything wrong, and I'm going to bring up the same old stuff as I always do. Okay. So they say at the beginning of the Big Bang. Now, this is scientific fact according to the evolutionists. This comes from the evolutionists. That at the beginning of the inflation, right, it traveled at 1 with, or let's just say 10 to make it easier, 10 with 58 zeros after it, right? That is 10 octazillion kilometers per second at the beginning of the inflation, right? Then it basically slowed down over time. So you've got this inflation, this Big Bang, this magic dot or singularity that gets popped into existence. Now, Lawrence Krauss even admits, I've sat there and watched Lawrence Krauss say that nobody on Earth has a workable theory of quantum gravity. There's plenty of theories out there, plenty of hypotheses out there, but no one has a workable theory of quantum gravity. And you cannot have your singularity without gravity. Now, that's the problem. Now, then they'll say, and then they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, hang on a second, but there is some stuff that like energy that's eternal, but not all. Okay, that's what they say with the Big Bang. Okay, that's what people say. Whereas Lawrence Krauss, Hawking, and Dawkins all hate any idea of any eternal anything. because this is why. When you look at the steady state universe, the steady state universe says that matter and energy always was and always will be, never had a beginning and can never have an end. So basically, the people who say eternal universe or say in the Big Bang there's some sort of eternal energy, but we don't know what it is. Anyway, but when they say that the steady state is eternal, what they're saying is that matter and energy is from everlasting to everlasting. What does it say in the Bible about God? It says God is from everlasting to everlasting. He never had a beginning and he can never have an end, right? So you guys are the worst hypocrites when it comes to the Big Bang, and you get backed into a corner when you say, oh, but nothing, well, it wasn't really nothing. There was some sort of eternal energy. There was this line with a little ditch dug in it, and this ditch was the cause of it. That's basically a very paraphrased and basic example of what Hawking said.
No,
Where
it's
did
not.
who dug that? But mate, I've got it on video. I will post all the videos in the live chat, all of them, and you can watch Hawking say it himself. Okay? So don't tell me he didn't say it, mate.
It's about
Don't tell me he didn't say it. So
you don't-
basically, what you're saying is that you're saying that either you've got two choices as an evolutionist. You've only got two, and that's it.
What does
You've
evolution
got
have to do with
nothing
alcoholic?
created
That
everything
makes
from
no
nothing,
sense.
or the eternal universe. That's it. The eternal universe where matter and energy is from everlasting to everlasting. Which one do you subscribe to? Because whichever one you subscribe to takes way more faith than the Christian, than the theist.
What
Way
do you
more
mean by
faith.
faith?
The atheist explanation for the beginning of the universe takes 1 billion times more faith than it
What do you mean
does
by faith?
for us. Well, you have to have faith. Were you there? Was anyone
No, I'm
there
not
when
asking,
the
what do you
expansion
mean by
happened at
faith?
1 with 58 zeros after it at 10
What do you mean by
octazillion
faith?
kilometers
What
per
does that
second?
have to do with what you mean by faith?
Hang on,
But were you there? But wait a minute, were you there? How do you know that matter and energy is from everlasting to everlasting? How do you know?
Oh, my, everybody calm down. Listen, so we're now in dumpster fire. Okay, it's officially arrived. So let's,
Of course I did that.
let's all calm down. Leo, if you want to respond, go ahead, and then we'll get back into discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start because you just galloped like 35,000 different points. What do you mean by faith? How are you using
Okay,
faith?
you just asked me what I meant by faith. Okay, what I mean by
did.
faith is that you have to have faith that
Yeah, but what do you mean by that
singularity
word?
popped a magic dot
No,
into
you're
existence
not
that
telling me. You're not
expanded.
telling me what you mean by faith. You're just saying you have to have faith. Like, what do you mean by that word?
Faith is the hope and belief in something that cannot be seen or proven, right?
Well, then, no,
that
we
is
don't
the
have
definition of faith.
No. Then
So
faith wouldn't
yes,
apply to here.
so you can prove the Big Bang happened and traveled at 1
yes.
with 58 zeros
Yes.
after it. You can you?
Yes.
Lawrence Krauss can't.
I don't really care
Stephen
what
Hawking
Lawrence Krauss
couldn't.
says or what Lawrence Krauss does. I don't think it's
Do you know
important.
what M stands for in M theory? Magic. It's called
No,
magic
it
theory.
actually stands for membrane, but
You're actually very wrong about that. It stands for magic. Go Google it now. Go Google what does the M stand for in
are you
M
here
theory,
to
and have a look and see how
discussion,
embarrassed
or are
you
you
look.
here to just like obfuscate and like interrupt and disrupt?
Just Google it.
All you're really doing is kind of like gumming things up right now. You're not really contributing anything meaningful to the discussion.
But Google it. Google it. What does the M in M theory mean? It means magic. It's the magic theory.
God bless you, Jason.
So you've got magic creating nothing, creating everything out of nothing. And you've got eternal universe that goes on from everlasting to everlasting. But we're crazy for believing in God. Now shut up.
Jason, come on. Okay, so at Wikipedia, M theory. Modern attempts to formulate M theory are typically based on matrix theory or the ADS/CFT correspondence. According to Witten, M should stand for magic. So now, obviously, there's
that doesn't mean it
things,
does. Yeah,
I know there's additional stuff to it, but The point being that
I mean, I would agree. It should.
Yeah, that's
It-
right. But
it could have-
means
It
magic.
is just like string
dumbass.
theory. It's
Oh,
just
not you,
magic.
dumbass John.
Yeah,
And
I
here
think-
we
I
go with
think-
the insults not contributing anything. Anyway, I wanted to get back to what we were.
Leo,
like
Leo,
to
hang
say
on. I was
something.
also going to defend you, so hang on for a second. So I'm going to continue the sentence. So modern attempts to formulate M theory, as written to Witten, according to Witten, M should stand for magic, mystery, or membrane, according to Taste. And the true meaning of the title should be decided when a more fundamental formulation of the theory is known. So
Yeah, I think it's a bit facetious.
Leo is...
In other words, they know nothing.
Well, I think there's a lot that's not known about the beginning of the universe. We can't see the
A
origin.
lot that's not known. Nothing is known. Not a lot. Nothing is known.
I would
Well,
just
when
request that
you
we
sort
don't
of say
engage material
prove-
because it's not going to be fruitful.
When you sort of say prove, Jason, like we sort of have a lot of evidence to suggest the inflationary universe. There's redshift, there's Hubble's law kind of thing. There's a lot
You know,
of
it
things.
says in the Bible that God stretches out the universe 17 times. It says in the Bible 17 times. It says God stretches out the
No, it
universe.
doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't, does
Right. I
it?
thought he
you,
stretched heaven.
mate,
Oh,
Google it.
all right.
Does
So,
God-
real quick, okay, so Purosity Gold is
I don't think
on
it says
point.
universe at all.
Purosity Gold is on point. He says, "What's that? What's that smell? Ah, it's just a dumpster fire." And I would say that yes. I think,
Yay.
all right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're now 1 hour and 2 minutes into the stream, and
Really?
the dumpster fire started, I'd say, probably like 10 minutes ago. So we made it about 50 minutes
When I got here.
before
flies when
dumpster fire
dumpsters
came
burning.
in. But okay,
Yeah.
so thank you so much for super chat, Purosity Gold. Okay, guys, so what are you guys arguing over now? Like, how many times?
Well,
it's,
I wanted to go back to what me and Bubba were talking about, because he's the one that made the claim that if someone references the supernatural, then necessarily they're referencing God. And I've asked him like 3 times for an argument for that, and every time he tries to deflect to something he thinks I said when I haven't said anything, I asked him to give an argument for something he said. And that's why I was interrupting him if he was curious, because he's not giving an argument. I don't care about literally anything that comes out of your mouth other than an argument for what you said.
I wasn't
Well-
deflecting. You were cutting me off.
I think Ronny
Yes,
had
because you
much
weren't
the same
responding. Are you going to
argument.
give an argument
No.
for your position now?
Yes, yes.
So
And
what's
I hope
the
you don't
argument?
cut me- I hope you don't cut me off. Okay.
I hope
to
you give
say
an
the
argument.
I'm gonna. Okay, to say the supernatural, what's the fucking word I'm looking for? To say the supernatural, what explains the supernatural is the supernatural. That's circular thinking. That's just.
But nobody
proposing,
said that. That's not an argument for your position.
You're not gonna cut me off. I
This
think
is
so.
well,
Why
yeah,
are you
because
cutting
you're
me
not
off, Leo?
responding.
Leo,
you made a
I'm
claim
listening.
that
I'm
nobody
I'm
argued.
I'm structuring an argument, dude.
This doesn't sound like it.
Oh no, you don't like it because I already cut off your escape route. You don't like that.
What escape route? I don't know what you mean.
Oh, Leo, don't play dumb with me.
I'm not. See, you don't have an argument. That's why you're
Okay,
not.
Yes, I
giving it.
do.
let Bubbles finish his argument. Leo, let's just.
He's not giving
sit
an
through the whole
argument.
thing and then
Oh,
discuss.
just
We'll
kidding.
give it Bubbles. Just line
Okay,
it up. How
guys,
long?
do
Just-
you remember the couple of a week and a half ago when I had to go to timed freaking responses? Are we going to go to that, or are we going to let people finish?
I hope
that?
not.
Go ahead, Bubblegum. Nobody interrupt him. I will cut you off if you keep rambling, but go ahead. And also, I just Googled it, and since creation week, the heavens have expanded. The Bible consistently uses the term stretching the heavens a total of 17 times. And there's a list of the verses. But anyway, go ahead.
What
Yeah.
website's that from?
Heavens, but not universe. The claim was that we stretched the universe.
Heavens means universe.
Yeah.
Well, in certain interpretations, it does.
Mhm.
Okay.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I'm pretty sure in that context, heavens is referring to the freaking universe in that context. But go ahead, Bubba.
Actually, not in the original Hebrew.
Okay, sure. If you think so,
There's many
that's hilarious.
contexts where they put
Well, it's
Okay,
the scholars. David,
in the original Hebrew, was the interpretation that did not mean all that is?
It's debated, but I mean, 'cause I think the word in Hebrew shemayim, which has the word water in it. So if you're a literalist, and there's many verses that talk about like the waters above and the waters below, and so like some of the Israeli heretical scholars think that the ancient biblicist had a different cosmology than creation ex nihilo and like primordial waters, and the word heavens literally means like the waters, like Shemayim. So maybe if that's what he's saying, but the general translation of the word is heavens.
Okay, so you're saying that there may be outliers that say otherwise, but the general consensus
What was meant by that in ancient time? If it meant that it was believed that there was like a primordial body of water, and so some scholars question what the original biblical cosmology and think that it was actually creation ex nihilo, is a Greek concept that was reinterpreted into the Hebrew scripture. And so there's different schools of biblical interpretations, but to call the word heavens firmament is probably a more closer translation. And so you have to get into deep cosmology of what's actually understood, or what does even heavens mean. And if you're going to take a dualist approach also, where you mean heavens, that there's a material realm, you're like what's the nature of the dualist system of the material and spiritual realm? Are they interconnected? What came first, and the nature of God? So you have to move into deep theology to understand these verses.
Interesting.
Right, but you can say that for like Genesis.
That's
1,
a very
but
fair,
in the later
very honest,
verses,
and very nuanced answer.
Yeah, but in the
Well, we
later
have-
verses, it does talk about what is in the heavens, and at that point, you have to accept that it's sort of this like, at least like this space that you can put things in.
Oh,
Sure,
real
that doesn't
quick-
mean they're talking about like space.
Okay, so we're gonna get back to Bubble, and before he does that, I'm gonna read a super chat for another $10 super chat from Alicia. Thank you so much. That's not much. There's not much point in arguing for God when you've already quote unquote quote pinned down end quote the qualifications for providing scientific quote unquote proof. It's a parlor game. That's. I mean, there is a little bit of that going around. That is for sure. Okay, Bubble, it is your turn. Go ahead. Nobody interrupt him. Let's get this over with. You still remember what you were talking about?
I'm like, can I be given a little bit extra time? Because oh my god, I'm so freaking pissed by these atheists who claim you can be atheist and believe in the supernatural. Okay, here's
you started with supernatural explains the supernatural.
no, but I see a bunch of atheists claiming you can be atheist and believe the supernatural, which is the stupidest comment ever. All right, here, let me
Okay,
go.
can we have the argument, please? I mean, this
right,
is
Please.
Here, I'll give it. Okay, to say the explanation for the supernatural is the supernatural, that's just circular thinking. That's just saying it's a brute fact. Okay, and so when we evoke a supernatural event, because everything would need a cause. For example, we know an apple would presuppose a tree, an apple tree specifically. And so when we have a supernatural event, like for example, if we see a demon, and it's a specific demon that is reference to, for example, a Christian demon, you would need to presuppose Jesus. And another supernatural event would be ghosts. Where on the supernatural line of causation would that fall? Of course, after God. If you're praying and that miracle comes true, you're praying to Jesus, you're praying to, I don't know other gods, maybe Thor. That would all stand in the precept that God exists.
Is that the argument?
Insane freaking comic books is a possible explanation. That's just dumb. And a comic book
question after this.
And a comic book, you can just insert anything. For example, I think X-Men, they just use magic pixie dust that gives the X-Men their superpowers. That's just a MacGuffin, dude.
I don't know.
Okay,
Well,
so,
the first problem is that hold on here, because I was the one that was kind of like pressing.
Okay,
him
can I
on
please
this.
go after you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm gonna at least try to be brief. The first thing you said was, to say that the supernatural is explained by the supernatural, but there you go again, deflecting to you thinking somebody else said something when nobody did. Nobody made an argument that the supernatural is explained by the supernatural, so I don't know why you're starting there. You made the statement that you cannot refer to the supernatural without necessarily referring to God, so I want the argument, and it should be deductive since you had the word necessarily in there, unless you're using a different modality than logic. So that's the first thing. after all that, you didn't really give an argument. So I'm still waiting for the argument for the thing that you said.
I literally provided the deduction, and the reason
No, you didn't. So wait, what rule of inference did you use?
I literally provided a deduction.
What rule of inference did you use?
Here, when you
No. Answer my question. If you use deduction, no. What rule of inference did you use? Did you use modus ponens? Did you use modus tollens? What rule of inference did you use?
I think that's a bit.
If you're getting I'm sorry, I got to press on this. If you're going to sit here and claim that you made a deductive argument, then you're going to give me the rule of inference. What rule of inference did you use?
Causation, dude. This is
that causation is not a rule of inference. See, you don't know. You have no idea what you're talking about. Go ahead, Mark. I'm done here.
Okay.
No, Leo. Wait. Let me answer Leo.
Okay,
Are you saying that deduction isn't
I'm not saying anything about deduction. I'm saying that deduction is rooted in a rule of inference. If you're saying that your argument is deductive, then you're using a rule of inference.
Leo,
you made the claim that you used a deductive argument, so I want the rule of inference your argument used.
Do you presuppose the laws of logic?
That's not an answer to my question. What's the rule of inference?
Stop dodging this.
I'm not dodging anything. You're dodging by not answering my question. You made the claim. You made the claim that you were making a deductive argument. You said your argument was deductive. Great. I'm not disputing that. All I'm asking you is what rule of inference you used. Why can't you answer that question? Now, I suspect that the reason you can't answer the question is because you don't know anything about basic logic. You don't know what rules of inferences are, and you didn't make a deductive argument. And so you're deflecting by asking me questions so that you can avoid answering this and avoid looking like you don't know what you're talking about when it's obvious you don't.
Stop, both of you. This is going.
You don't believe in facts, Leo, because you're deploying the laws of logic without affirming them. And that is so disingenuous of you, Leo.
Bubbles, come on. Okay, so I just want to address Bubbles saying, "Oh, this is a comic book and stuff." I could explain psychic powers with, say, chi energy or the energy from my body and stuff like that. The supernatural explains the supernatural is a tautology. I agree with Bubbles on that. I want to ask Bubbles whether the supernatural reasons require explanations.
No, I'm saying you need an explanation for the supernatural reason. For example, if you do have a prayer,
right? So what's the explanation for God?
Okay, here I'm deploying the laws of logic here, which would mean
Bubbles. If supernatural causes require no. It's a simple question. If supernatural explanations causes require explanations, then God requires an explanation because he's.
That's the thing. God would not require an explanation because then he wouldn't be the God.
Special pleading.
Why doesn't he?
Well, you have to separate your metaphysics. Okay. If you take a dualistic, there's a spiritual realm and a material realm. Science only covers material phenomenon. Some systems logic.
Okay, let me reply. Can I reply? Okay, are you deploying the laws of logic, Mark Reed?
That's not. Oh my God.
Yes, it is, Leo. You were deploying the laws of logic without affirming them.
So okay, you know what? I'm kind of curious. Yeah, I'm deploying the laws of logic. Where's this going?
Without affirming them. Are you affirming?
What do you mean by affirming them?
Are you validating? Are they valid?
When you say the laws of logic are valid, do you mean that like there's no like fallacies or inequities in them? Is that what you're saying?
Actually true.
Well, I kind of want like an answer from Bubbles.
Are they true, Leo? Are you validating them?
Are the laws of logic true? I would say that holy shit, because people keep interrupting. I'm asking if that's what you're asking me because I can't hear. So did you ask me if the laws of logic? Oh, Jesus fucking Christ!
Try to have a conversation.
No, hold on. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, and people keep butting in. Bubbles, are you asking me if the laws of logic are true? Is that your question?
I'm asking you if you're deploying the laws of logic. Are you validating the laws of logic when you deploy them?
When you say validating, are you asking me if the laws of logic are true?
I'm asking, do you think they're true?
Yes, I think they're true.
Okay. Why are the laws of logic true?
What do you mean by like why? Like, do you want like a? Do you want an axiomatic? Do you want? Can I specify what I'm saying?
No. This.
Okay, I guess we don't want discussions here.
You don't want to admit you're using circular
no, both
logic.
of you-
No, I'm
both-
trying to get to what it is Bubbles.
Okay, both of you
Here's
are
the
going
point that
backstage.
Ronnie is fourth point about mathematics, and that TJump said that math is a language, and it's it's really the same point. A logic. If TJump said that math isn't true, it's just a language that man created. It's the same with mathematics, with logic, or you could accept the logic it's true,
Right.
and then you have to say what's the origin. So it's a version of the
Yeah.
transcendental argument of where's the nature of these higher order rules that are true. And so TJump was willing to reject it and say math, and presumably he would say the same thing about logic, is just a language.
Correct. Yes.
I'm not sure
Right,
I would
one sec.
agree
Let's
with
just get
that.
back to the previous
That is correct.
point about
That's
like
T-Jump's
what the atoms
position.
are.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think I would agree with that. I think that numbers are definitely abstractions, but I think maths is more like a sort of pseudo-concrete kind of thing. It does have more weight than just a language. I mean, correct me if
Right,
I'm
right.
wrong, but
That's
It's not T-Jump's
your
position.
opinion. I just said that was
Sure.
mentioned in the debate, and that was
Yeah.
TJump's.
No, you're correct. Yeah.
Mentioned that was one of Ronnie's arguments, which is the Platonic argument of forms. All of these are classical Greek arguments. Almost none of this is new.
Agreed.
But that. So if you're going to separate into a dualistic nature, where the spiritual realm doesn't function according to the same rules as the material realm, and it's saying if logic is an element, some systems hold that the spiritual realm also functions according to the rules of logic, although the other systems say that logic only controls the material realm, and then the rules of science in the various aspects. But it seems that was the crux of this. What's the nature of God? What are the nature of the rules that we could understand to say govern the material realm? And can we apply or know those rules to govern the spiritual realm that would include, so to say, God?
And those, it wouldn't follow logically. It would follow logically that we can the rules of naturalism and physicalism and demand things of the supernatural using them.
All right.
Well, I
There's
think
no
that
reason, for example, why the law of identity or the law of non-contradiction would hold true in any ontology in a non-physical realm.
I don't know whether it would or not. I mean, I don't think the spiritual
Probably,
realm
yeah.
exists to have anything in. So, yeah, I
That's
I
the
think that's
Platonic
one-
argument. Just the use of math or logic necessitates the spiritual realm, because math and logic is an element of the spiritual realm. So you're taking the benefit of the spiritual realm by using its tool, namely math and logic, and therefore you're the best of both worlds fallacy is you don't get to use logic unless you acknowledge where logic comes from, which is the spiritual realm.
Well, I don't
Well,
think
exactly.
logic
That's-
comes
that's-
from the
that's-
spiritual
You
realm.
can't go around in that circle.
Nor does
though,
math.
David.
Just a quick point before I make is that
I mean, that's
can't
just
go
the
around in that
Platonic
circle,
argument.
David.
This is
when you asked for the definition of faith, that wasn't quite correct to the Aussie gentleman.
Oh,
the
God, we
faith
go
is
back
the
there.
absolute trust or confidence in something. So you can think of it as brute facts at the metaphysical level.
No, it's
So
the
faith is
absolute
the
trust and
absolute
confidence in something that can't be proven or seen.
Yeah,
It's not the
absolutely.
absolute trust and confidence in something. That could just mean something that's literal, you know what I mean? Like, you just got that completely wrong.
No, yeah,
Go
no,
look up
scientists
Merriam-Webster.
Scientists have faith in the scientific method. They have faith in scientism. They have faith that for anything we don't know, epistemically, science will ultimately provide an answer. These are metaphysical statements of faith in the epistemologies of science.
Wait,
You're wrong there,
atheism
Mel.
is
I
not
don't think we
science.
have faith that science will always provide an answer. I don't think that's true. I mean, some
So you're
people
not
may
saying they're
believe
the
that,
scientists.
but I don't think that's I
Okay.
wouldn't take that position.
You
All
take
right,
it
I'm
on-
not
I would have.
saying-
Okay, so whether or not there's outliers that don't take that position, I would have to agree with you 100%. House of Comments that, and also I'd have to say that whether or not many in that camp even realize that's the position they're taking, and that it ultimately is a faith position, is something that doesn't get either gets rejected from a consideration perspective or glossed over a lot. Real quick, I got another very generous super chat, $20 super chat from Losha. Says, within the religion that's being argued against, it's not how the adherents come into contact with their deity. If you try to contain God within the laws of being, quote unquote, and then force that back onto the other system, it's just a game. Yeah, that's
Okay.
a fair point.
All right, I just want to go back to the previous point about like what the heavens are. So if we look at Isaiah 10, or Isaiah 13:10, it says, "For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light, and the sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine." If you notice the start of the verse, it says, "The stars of heaven and the constellations thereof," which obviously implies that the stars and the constellations are within the heaven. And
Yeah,
the
but
stars and the constellations are obviously in the universe, right? Not just in a local plane.
Yeah, sorry, Godzilla, but that doesn't sort of like, as Duvid was saying, like they may have believed it was a sort of watery domain. It doesn't actually address what it was they were talking about.
Right, but I don't think that's what's important. I think the important point is it means like everything out there, right? Because the stars are as far as you can see. Even if you take sort of this ancient
that's not
interpretation.
true.
I think we
doing
could be.
biblical
I think we could be
interpretation.
charitable and say that yes, it could be interpreted that way without losing.
Yeah, I
too
guess
much.
so.
I mean, it could be your interpretation. That's why I'm making the point. Is it non-physical? You're talking about a spiritual, non-physical entity. The literal etymology of the word shemayim, which has the word mayim, water, within it, and say the firmament. And so the heretical Israeli scholars will claim that the ancient Israelites believed in primordial waters, which makes sense with the word. So when you say the word heaven, well, why does the word heaven have water in it? If it's if it means the heavens, and so I mean you could interpret it, and there are many schools of interpretation. But in what do you mean heaven? When you say heaven, do you mean non-physical? You're talking about the spiritual world.
Oh yeah, it's funny
Well,
when
where the stars are, it's obviously
please,
not referring to
can I make a quick?
something
Can I,
pure,
About
Godzilla?
stars.
Godzilla, can I make a quick point? Yeah, when physicists talk about the fields, they often call them or refer to them as liquid-like substances that fill the universe but are not physical. It's
No,
an
that's
abstract.
that's not what they're understood
Yes,
as at all.
yes, it is. They're literally that's how they're
No.
understood. Leo,
No.
do you
So
want to
wait,
actually debate me on this?
Biblical
In virtue of
interpretation. There's
what?
thousands of schools of interpretation. So I mean, there is
Not
no
in
there is
quantum
no
field
accepted
theory, there
single
is not.
school. But I mean, so
They
that's why
literally
I'm
call
trying to
them
pin down this
fluctuations because
question
they're
of,
water-like.
Are you a
No,
dualist?
no,
Are
they
you a
don't call them
dualist?
that.
Literally like that. That's literally an
No.
analogy they use.
But
Fields
upon the issue of
will
redshift, you're talking
fluctuate
about the
when they're
stars
sitting at
redshifting, and
vacuum.
so the stars are in the heaven,
So
and
I
that's being
don't.
stretched. That would
Yeah,
still
nobody
support
cares
the
about what the Bible. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not relevant to the discussion. Yeah.
I mean, logical,
So
do you see the point I'm
nobody,
trying to stress?
no physicist is going to say that quantum fields are non-physical. That's just not something that's.
Yes, Leo. Nobody.
Excuse me.
Nobody.
Excuse
Go ahead.
me. So we can measure them. What you're referring to are vacuum field fluctuations. You don't generally measure these in quantum fields. This is what you measure when a quantum field is at vacuum. That is, that you've removed all possible energy from it. There is still a fleeting amount of energy contained in that field, and it quote unquote fluctuates. That's somewhat of a loose term here. We can measure this, and in fact, there are certainly effects in reality that are based on those fluctuations. So when I'm finished, you can speak. Don't worry, you'll get your time. So yeah, when you say that they're not physical, this just tells me that you've never actually made an attempt to like understand the basics of either classical or quantum field theory.
Okay, Leo. Literally nobody in the physics community has said that the fields are physical. Literally nobody. You're pulling that shit out of your
Except the
ass.
textbooks that I've read. The textbooks that
No. What they say in the text. Okay, here's what it says in the textbook. They are. What was the word?
Yeah, which textbook are you citing from? What's the author and what's the title?
No, I'm gonna give you the
Also,
definition.
can you give me the name of the publisher, please?
No, I'm gonna give you the definition of fields.
The definition of field doesn't have anything to do with quantum field. Wait, you think that the general Merriam-Webster's definition of field is what it means in quantum field theory?
No, it's the same definition TJump gave me.
Okay, well, you're
I don't
arguing.
care about
Hang on a second. Quick time out. Find your sources. Malosha has another $10 super chat. It says, in our own personal experience, we are named and known before we know ourselves. Buber and Rosenstock Hussey. I guess that's quoting. It's actually kind of interesting you bring that up because yesterday I was actually reading some stuff about the stages of self-awareness and how it affects the psychology of us as children.
Physical
And-
parameters. We do this all the time. That makes them physical. The same way that we can define like your washing machine with physical parameters.
Dude, this has nothing. What I'm saying is an
Piaget?
observation about just
Talking about
human
Piaget?
our development in general. Okay, so this has nothing to do with your little freaking argument with bubbles. Okay,
I know that I was
dude,
responding.
shut the hell up, dude. I wasn't responding to you. I was responding to this super chat. Okay, and I was bringing up something.
apologize.
I was bringing up something, another piece of knowledge on a different topic. Okay, so just shut the hell up when I'm responding to a super chat. Okay,
Well, I didn't know you responded. I
shut
apologize.
the hell up. I'm literally just told you to shut the hell up.
Wow,
You're
I
not
can't
listening.
even apologize. Holy fuck.
All right, so Leo's gonna go backstage
Wow,
again
language.
because I literally tell him to not talk, and then he talks. It's amazing how you have to put Leo in timeout all the time. So anyway, the point I was where I was going with this was in the context of how it impacts the stages of psychology as we get older. Once there's that moment of recognition of self, then it begins enables the baby to start recognizing that there is obviously more to their existence, but also being able to direct different sensations they're having from the frame of reference of self too. So like before this moment, when they experience pain, they don't actually necessarily look at where the pain is on their body because they don't realize that that is what is them. But after they have that recognition of self, then they poke themselves or whatever, then they immediately begin to, their eyes literally go to that spot on themselves. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I reckon it's fascinating. And when they're first born, they kind of seem to think themselves part of the mother. Like they still think they're a part of their mother's body. It's really interesting.
Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of fascinating as well in relation to like what's known. This is always probably find interesting in relation to the abortion argument, but it's well studied and documented that that point you're making directly correlates with the mother's voice that has been derived from the womb. And this extrapolates out into nursing and different things where like you could have somebody else on the opposite side talking and the child will like move to the opposite side to be away from the other voice that's talking because it feels like it's invading its space. It's pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, okay, so let's get back to it. Jason's back. Leo is back. Now we're all calm down here. Let's get back
Can I
to
make a quick point?
Can I offer an apology to you really quickly?
A quick little point here is that if you look at physics and the history of physics and this boundary, speaking of with the relationship between the physical and the metaphysical, at every point in time, physics has generated ontologies that have been subsumed by the next wave of physical advances in physics. But at each point in history, from the Greeks, the atomists, the periodic table to Newton, they've always demanded that people believe in God, in quotes, explain God using the physics du jour ontology. The Greeks were told that at the times of the Greeks, it was gods and fire. At the time of Newton, it was at Cambridge at Trinity, they were saying, would Newton be able to create a God equation? At each point, the physicalists and naturalists have used their own tools to demand of those that believe in God a description that is amenable to the physical world. And they don't get never going to happen. Yeah,
well, the problem there, Ralph, is that you don't, like, we're sort of into methodologies and sort of, yeah, they require a scientific methodology. But the problem is that faith-based methodologies don't seem to work in the same way that scientific ones do. I wouldn't demand a scientific methodology for presenting evidence for a God, but you'd have to in some way demonstrate that your methodology is reliable for obtaining evidence.
I don't think
that way it was done. If I ask most Christians, correct me if I'm wrong, the Christians are balanced. And I said, if we look at what a basic epistemology would be for faith, we'd start by divine inspection and revelation. We would say that physics is only a way of looking at something that is revealed to us, and the revelation is what we're using to peel back the veil.
The problem with that, Ralph, is if you rely one special revelation, you have to acknowledge all special revelations that people do, including for other gods and other supernatural phenomena. You can't open the door and use special pleading to say, well, I'm going to use my special revelation, but that guy over in Islam or Scientology or some other religion can't use theirs.
Well, we can actually, and do it if anyone would speak about this. Why can't we hold multiple conflicting, contrarian truth positions? Why?
I think we're missing the point here.
No, but
because they're not reliable. They get you to different answers.
So what do you mean by reliable?
Well, reliable.
Let me give you
is
an example.
robust.
Physics has never been.
Well,
reliable.
you did ask a question, Ralph. I'll answer it.
Physics is actually quite reliable. Has been throughout its entire history.
Sure. So it's robust, rigorous, repeatable. So robust means that you basically multiple. Well, I mean, I don't know. Well, if nobody knows what it means that multiple people can do the same thing and get the same answer. Rigorous means that you take into account all possibilities. Unfortunately, when you sort of say, well, I've got a special revelation and somebody else is saying they've got a special revelation, that methodology... No, let me finish. That methodology gets you to two completely separate and contradictory answers, so it is not reliable.
Okay, Mark, but let me just quickly stress you in that lesson while I take over. But let me take a simple example from physics. So if I had differential calculus algebra, I couldn't really work out proper trajectories for formulas for final velocity in the Newtonian age. I knew if I dropped an object on the floor, I roughly had something that's the square root of twice the gravitational constant divided by height. Sure. At that point, that method was reliable, it was robust, it was repeatable, it was testable. Sure. Multiple people could get the answers. But we all know it was completely wrong because it didn't have the Lorentz transformation.
It's not wrong, but it doesn't need it.
The point I'm trying to make is a deeper point in philosophy. What I'm trying to say is there's no epistemic commitment to the truth-bearing value of it. Other than
Ralph, I want to address what you said, because it's not wrong. It describes what happens in sort of conventional ballistics and things like that pretty accurately.
But
when
you say pretty accurately,
of a model.
No, it doesn't. It describes it perfectly accurately. Newtonian mechanics is deterministic. The fact that it doesn't account for relativistic effects is not relevant because we're not talking about things that need relativistic effects factored into them. So why would we do that?
Yeah, it doesn't address.
My point is, it still has no truth bearing because you cannot make the claim without making a metaphysical position that without the Lorentz transformation, the velocity is actually true. You're trying to apply truth. You're trying to apply truth value to science, which deals with accuracy, not truth. Right? So
I would say science deals with
that was my point. Accuracy,
I'd probably take a different philosophical, scientific view on that.
It doesn't deal with truths like he's talking about.
Science doesn't deal with truth. Truth is a matter of.
Well, I think it does. Saying that it doesn't really mean anything.
Physical phenomenon. It was created to be mind independent at a time where the universal.
Well, I don't need to be lectured
was that mind was not a physical entity. That mind is a spiritual element. Galileo, who created the mind independent science, like Philip Goff's Galileo's error, and so physics, any form of science, if it's perfectly accurate, does not describe mind. It describes physical elements. So now in the modern day, you want to use science and try to attempt to use science to describe mind. And
I don't think
that's really the sense of.
Well, yeah, I don't know what that has to do with what I just said. I think that science does deal with truth. I don't know what that has to do with mind.
It doesn't, because science.
But yeah, I don't know where we're at right now in the discussion.
Science is a
to what house? Okay, I guess not.
Truth is a matter of philosophy, not science.
Well, I think that depends on what you mean. I think that depends on what you mean by truth.
Well,
yeah, I think that
truth is a philosophical word. It's not a scientific word.
I think that depends on what you mean by truth.
Well, truth is defined by philosophy, not science.
Well, I think that depends on what you mean by truth.
Well, exactly, because I'm saying that science doesn't define.
So what do you mean by truth?
Science defines.
But hang on, Leo. I'm sorry, I was asking a question. I'm going to answer.
Hang on, Leo.
I hold to a semantic theory of truth.
It's supposed to be
I think truth is a property of sentences.
Well done. What definition of truth do you use, David?
Well, it's a matter of philosophy, and I say truth. To me, truth is dependent on there being a spiritual realm.
What does that mean? What are you saying when you say that truth is dependent on a spiritual realm?
That there's a separate, non-physical realm that substantiates higher order rules.
Yeah, in virtue of what does it do this?
Have you heard of dualism?
So truth is a higher order rule that holds true in all cases, and the origin of concepts, ideas in general I would say by definition are non-physical, but minimally they're a product of mind.
Maybe I misspoke.
Science is mind independent.
I beg your pardon. Idealism.
Maybe I misspoke, and what I meant is it doesn't deal with metaphysical truths. Would you agree with that?
What is metaphysical truth? I don't know what metaphysical truth means.
Well, you mean mind dependent or mind independent? So the laws of the physical world are mind independent. That's how Galileo laid it out. All physical laws measure physical phenomenon and are independent.
I knew this
mind.
10 years ago.
Well, that's what seems to work. The scientific methodology is what seems to work. But what I didn't notice is Ralph sort of come up with another methodology that we can use the same way.
I mean, I think logic is a pretty good system for getting at like truth and understanding things.
I would have to agree with Leo on that one. Okay, real quick. So, Alosha, no $10 super chat. Thank you so much. Says, no, Mark, the Greeks were just mediating archetypes. God. All religions do this. There's a subtle assertion here that isn't being countenanced. We just don't experience life in this way. Do you have a response to that, Mark?
Well, I for a second there, I thought you were James. You were very, very similar. The Greeks were just mediating archetypes. Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I mean, they had their gods, sure, like multiples of them. All religions do this, yeah, but I mean, I don't believe in any gods, so why would I?
Archetypes aren't God.
Wait,
I mean,
do
he
you
has
believe
God.
in the supernatural?
I think they just point. He's just pointing at a linguistic.
Do you believe in a supernatural, Mark?
Limitation.
No, I don't.
It's just a linguistic limitation, right? When we say truth, what do we mean by truth? That's a very tricky question.
I don't think it's a limitation.
When we linguistic limitation, I said.
Yeah, I don't think that's what truth is.
Yeah,
I didn't say that's what truth was. I said language is limited in the way it describes.
In the way it describes what?
Anything.
Well, I don't know if I would agree with that.
Yeah, certainly metaphysically.
I definitely don't agree with that.
You disagree with TJump's opinion that math and logic.
I disagree. No.
You think that
I think both mathematics and logic are convented. I can tell you what I mean. I can tell you what I mean, or what I think. I think both I take the view that probably most philosophers and mathematicians would take, and logicians, that mathematics and logic are convented systems developed by humans as a means of axiomatizing basic immediate experiences of reality into a formal system that can be used to further analyze reality and can be used to further analyze itself, through which we can discover fundamental truths contained within the system that was fundamentally invented by humans. So it isn't that math was invented, and it's not that math was discovered, it's that both of them play a role. The system as a whole was ultimately invented by humans, but humans were capable of discovering certain things about the system based on the axioms they set at the foundation of it.
Leo, my
question is the point that science requires a philosophical framework to operate in. So, in order to
an epistemological framework, sure,
a philosophical framework for it to operate in, and you
I understand
really
this. What's your point?
About the material spiritual realm and the origins of higher order rules, whether they exist.
What do you mean by higher order rules? Like, are you using like? Wait, hold on. Are you using rules on like a Wittgensteinian sense? Like what?
Well, in any sense that you take that there, if you want to use the word truth, that there is such a concept as truth, or to call a higher order rule that holds true in all cases.
Well, I take to a Tarskian view of truth. I think truth is a semantic property of our languages. It's not some like objective feature of reality.
I have a question for you, Leo. When the noise I may not have picked up correctly, did you say your idea holds to the semantic theory of truth, in which truth is a property of sentence?
Yeah, I just said that I hold to Tarski's view, to the view that he outlined.
So, consequence of that from computer science and language and semantics is that the outer.
Wait, hold on. I didn't catch that. As a consequence of what?
If I drew the semantic stack of language in computer science, right? So in computer science, we have formal models of all languages, natural languages, and languages, right? So if I look at the formal stack in semantics, that means you are committed by making that statement that your outer nested semantic context would be trust followed by proof. So your truth, your sense of truth.
What are you talking about?
So do you know what the semantic stack is in formal semantics?
What I'm talking about doesn't have anything to do with formal semantics, and no, I don't know what that is. Actually, no, it doesn't. This is philosophy of language and
Correct.
like
do you know
logic.
Yeah, but you know the language is swallowed by computer science, right?
No, it's not. So I don't know what you're talking about. So, like, do you understand what Tarski's semantic theory of truth is?
I would like to. May I share my screen for a second? Is that possible?
Wait, you're talking about the semantic web stack?
Yes, you can share it. You can share.
Yeah, he's going off about something that's not even remotely related to what I'm talking about. Excuse me.
Everybody calm down for 1 second. May I complete? So what we did.
So I don't get to finish what I was saying. Okay,
hang on. Both of you, be quiet for 1 second. Everybody, calm down. Okay, so House of Comments, you're going to be able to make your case, and Leo can respond before we do that. Franco says
Unicode.
$2 super chat, based Leo, and then Alosha, another $10 super chat says truth is a person, Jesus Christ. Absent that, at best, we're thrown back into subjective Platonic disconnect. This is how Christianity flipped the table on paganism. That's
so
from Cochrane.
true.
So thank you so much for
Very
that. It's very, very good point. Okay, so
Yes,
the floor is now
philosophical Unicode. That philosophical concept of Unicode, right?
the floor is now going to House of Comments, and then Leo can respond. Go ahead.
So I'll make it very quick. So if you look at how if you had to write a computer program that had to ingest every journal in physics, biology, chemistry, what would it have? What is the semantic stack of language in a formal computing machine? At the base layer, we're going to have a bunch of symbols. I'm trying to get a pretty picture here. We have a bunch of symbols, A, B, C, D, E. Then I'm going to have rules of syntax that put them together that says this word is a correct word, it's not spelled wrongly. Then I'm going to attach semantics to the layer of those words that give them descriptive meanings. If I go all the way up to a formal computing Turing machine, my outer rules are the only ways in which I could generate logical frameworks. Leo alluded to the 18 rules or 9 pairs of rules of inferential logic, in which I form mathematical proofs, of which the outer context is trust. So when you make the claim that I'm an adherent to the semantic, this is the formal semantic stack in science, or computer science of all languages, otherwise language translation won't work. Your outer commitment, therefore, is to a concept of trust, is my point.
Actually, the outer limit is user interface and applications. You actually cut it off.
Can we not get bogged down in a week, because this doesn't have anything to do. He mentioned absolutely nothing that it's even remotely related to Tarski's semantic. That's what I want. I want House of Comments to tell me what Tarski's semantic theory of truth is.
Why does it matter?
Because he asked me about it. I hold to that, and he asked me about it, and then he went off on this.
So now you want to play Trivial Pursuit?
No. Would you like me to explain why I'm asking him that question? Because I'm trying to understand if he understands the things I'm saying before going off on whatever tangent it is he's going
I understand that in philosophy and whatever we're talking about the origin of truth, higher order rules, and you're saying no. I haven't heard it to Tarski, at least from I know. Maybe I have. I don't know if anyone else has.
Alfred Tarski. Yes.
Okay. So House of Comments to say he has heard of it. So everybody shut the hell up and let him respond, and then we'll get back to this. Go ahead, House of Comments.
Yeah. So the brief things like Tarski's theories of truth and all semantic theories of truth in linguistics, for example, were all rendered moot by formal computer science. So we look at things like Tarski's theory of truth. There are multiple ones that say, if a certain proposition is true, if it only has a formal requirement requiring the language. All of this was analytical philosophy written in English words that I couldn't create a semantic tuple stack which I could automatically process. So when you say, is the semantic theory of truth according to Tarski meaningful to computer scientists, it's gibberish. I cannot take Tarski's theories of truth and write automated reasoning algorithms.
Yeah, that's not what the semantic theory of truth is.
What you're talking about is how the hierarchy of languages applies to web development. Notice that the trust interface is provided by the cryptography, right? You're talking about data interchange and Unicodes and things like that. You're not talking about
He's not talking philosophy of language.
He's not.
Just,
No,
He's
I'm
talking
really
about-
not, Mark. That's not true, Mark.
yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. So every time you
Hang on a second.
shift
Let me
it from that
address Mark.
framework,
No,
you're
that's not
just
true, Mark.
It's the model for the
avoiding the
origin of
question.
truth and
Hang on a
higher
second. Let me
order
address
rules.
Mark.
Because
Let me
that's the
address Mark.
point.
Mark, that's
The
not
point
true,
we're
actually.
talking about here is God,
It is
and
true.
to some
Yeah,
extent,
I mean,
God
we
is
can go
these
on
higher
underneath
order
upwards.
rules. And so,
That
what's
makes
the
no
origin of
sense.
these higher order rules?
What do
And
you
can
mean by
science-
rules? Holy shit.
May I
Well, that's
address
why we're
Mark?
having this conversation. What do we mean by truth?
Well, that's
What
not
do
the
we mean by
conversation I'm
God?
having.
If I want to say
Okay,
that
Leo's having his
God
own
means
conversation.
Well, no,
God
I'm trying to get
God
at
means
whether
higher
you
order
can understand what the semantic theory of truth is, because so
I
thus
don't
far
even
you do
understand
not.
semantics.
Well, see, the thing is, see, this is the problem. He hears the
You
word
don't even know what
semantic.
semantic stack was.
Excuse me, I'm still speaking. He hears the word semantic in semantic theory of truth, and then thinks this deals with formal semantics as sort of a specifically linguistically scientific concept. No. Tarski's semantic theory of truth is philosophy of language. You're not
Correct.
even
and I said
in
it's
your
gibberish.
excuse me, I haven't
Excuse
I haven't finished. You're not even in the framework of the discussion right now. You have not outlined what the
Thank you
semantic
for your
theory of
characterization, Leo.
excuse me, I haven't finished yet.
Here we
You
go.
haven't outlined what Tarski's semantic theory of truth
Yes, I
is.
did.
I don't think that you understand philosophy of language.
Well, your characterizations don't interest me,
it
Leo.
seems to me that you're just floundering here. If
No,
so,
that's-
you claim to understand it. What
Can
is
you
a
just
T
blabber
scheme?
for a while,
Can you
Leo?
tell
Can
me
you
what a
lose
T
it again?
scheme is?
Okay, one second. Just calm down.
T
So, Mark,
scheme?
go back to Mark's point. No, actually, that's not true, Mark. It's not about just web
Yeah,
development.
dodge the
at all.
question.
It's not about web development.
is
at all.
just
It's
web
actually about the
development.
formal representation of language, Mark. In
No.
computer
The
science, in
problem
formal computer science.
is you do computer
Mark,
science.
Mark,
and
may I
when
finish?
all
Notice
you
how
do
he
is
wants to
hammer,
talk
all
about
you
this,
see
but
is
not
higher.
about what he asked me about.
Mark, wow,
Okay.
Leo, you wanted not to be interrupted, and you just started interrupting people.
I'm not interested in having a discussion about web development.
I'm not talking about web development. If you think it's about web development, you're misunderstanding semantics. You keep
when we're
injecting
talking
it for
about
web development.
rules, I mean, we're talking about
listen,
God.
listen,
This
listen,
is
Nothing
the
to do with web
conversation about
development. That was
God.
the history of its
Okay,
evolution.
gentlemen, Huskar, just hang on a second. Okay, listen. We're about to go to freaking timed responses. If everybody doesn't shut the F up and let people talk for more than 10 seconds. Okay? So, Mark, Duvid, Leo, the next one of you opens your freaking mouth until House of Comments says he yields. And or your turn, or whatever words he wants to use to end his, he's completed his thought. You're going backstage for a timeout. Okay? So everybody just shut the hell up and let's actually make some progress on this discussion. Go ahead, House of Comments.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. So, directly to Mark. Mark, you misunderstand that the semantic web stack has anything to do with web development. That was the origins of the industry that brought it about in terms of its funding. I know this because I was there when it was happening. So, no, not at all. What it does do is it creates the formal mathematical or theoretical computer science description of all language as a stack of symbols to syntax to semantics, in which I can do things like, and let me give you an example. At Stanford, we ingested 1.8 million PubMed articles. We then proceed using semantic technologies to ingest them all, automatically generate the ontologies, find mistakes in the ontologies, find mistakes in the semantics using formal automated reasoning. There was no sentence, be it in the Journal of Physics or the Journal of Biology or a literature journal, which is not amenable to such processing. It has nothing to do with web development. Web development would just be a user interface layer. But what we do know from this, and this is formal theoretical computer science, that if I have a graph or a constructed layered graph of semantic tuples, it is the only formal definition of what meaning is. And from that, I can do things like generate proofs of the laws of arithmetic, generate logical proofs, run through all Leo's favorite 18 sequential differential rules. And you'll find right at the outer context is a thing called trust. So therefore, anyone who commits to a semantic theory or truth based on semantics, and a last little quick point, if I may, the analytical philosophy camp that seems to be very favored by the atheists are basically a qualitative gibberish to a computer scientist. When you make statements, I'm going to be able to take those statements, ingest them, and put them formally into a scientific framework to see if they're just gobbledygook. So I reject analytical philosophy that doesn't have a meaning in computer science. Thank you for my time.
All right, appreciate it. Okay, Mark, do you want to respond?
Yeah. So this is basically somebody, I mean, all he's got is a hammer, so all he sees is nails. He's been trained in computer science, so he's basically saying all philosophy is gibberish, doesn't make any sense. It's only the web development tool that I'm using for my computers that makes any sense whatsoever. It's just a ridiculous argument. There's nothing that says this should be used instead of formal logic. I'm sure that Stanford, philosophy isn't using web development, semantic web topography to do philosophical argumentation. This is just one person who's trained in one thing, and that's all he sees, and that's it. I yield.
Do you want to respond to the House comments?
It's all about person whether I'm trained and no one else is trained. The entire research program was run by Tim Berners-Lee and his team at Stanford. It's currently used in the United States Department of Defense. It's used for real-time surgery for soldiers in the fields. Obviously, if it's a piece of science and it works as a piece of technology, it therefore can't just be what my opinion is. And again, I keep correcting you, and hopefully you learn more. It has nothing to do with web development. Web development is what originated it for its reason, for its initial use cases. And when I say philosophy, no, I don't reject philosophy. I'm just very careful to say which parts of philosophy are mumbo-jumbo, which parts of philosophy line up to my science. And when you reject computer science, that's the same as rejecting maths or rejecting physics, given that Alan Turing has converted every laws in mathematics, every rule in mathematics is a Turing machine in science fiction. So when you say all I have is computer science, that's like saying all I have is physics and maths, right?
Well, I don't doubt that it's useful, and you said it has a number of uses. I'm not arguing that, so I don't know why you brought that up. What I'm saying that it's not, if you can get me a paper that says that this has replaced philosophy as you claim, then I'm more than happy to read it.
I didn't make that claim. I said
you did say that. Well, then give me a paper.
Doesn't make sense.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, then give me a paper that says that it's replacing analytical philosophy.
I didn't say that it did. I said I take the position that analytical philosophy, Ralph takes the position that analytical philosophy it isn't translatable to science, just like an atheist would say some metaphysical statement, a spiritual statement that's not translatable to my evidence and my argumentation. Any atheist that says, unless I have a syllogism, give me the argument evidence for God exists, they're using the laws of logic, or strictly speaking, rationalism or empiricism, are making demands on something. They reject anything. The same way I reject any analytical philosophy, which I cannot see.
I just want to address that real quick, and I'll just say one last thing. So I think the word that you used was replacing philosophy. Now, you can believe that, that's fine, but you're making a knowledge claim and a definitive claim here, and now you're walking it back. So give me the paper saying this is replacing any philosophy, and you can send that over to me in your own time. If you can't send that over, then I don't see any reason to believe you.
I just matter whether you believe me or not. I'm saying I didn't, and be very, very clear. I'm going to repeat my claim once more and more carefully. Analytical, by which I mean English sentences made in words in English. If they cannot be mapped to a model in computer science, I reject them as being analytical English.
I don't care.
I don't even know what that's
supposed to mean. Sorry, Leo, go ahead.
No, that's all good. With respect to what House of Comments has said, so yeah, I've asked him like 3 times if he can tell me what the semantic theory of truth is, and each time he goes off about stuff in formal semantics and computer science, which doesn't have anything to do with the semantic theory of truth, which is a particular model for understanding what truth is in philosophy of language and even philosophy of logic. It deals a bit with that. He claimed he understood what the semantic theory of truth is, but I asked him if he could define what a T-scheme is, and he didn't tell me what that was. So I'm just skeptical that he actually understands what this is. And the reason that I think this is important is because he's the one that asked me what I mean by truth. He's the one that asked me about my model for what truth is. And when I've outlined it, it seems that he doesn't understand what it is, and it also seems that he doesn't want to understand what it is. And I predict that going forward, he will continue to be obstinate with respect to understanding how I understand truth.
That may be the case, but no, I asked you if you understood semantics, and you said no. When I said, do you know what a semantic stack is?
It's not relevant to the discussion.
Allow me to finish. When I said, what was that? You said that doesn't even matter. It's not relevant. When I presented when I presented you went silent, that means I could take, for example, any English sentence, any formal sentence. I could take Tosky's material adequacy condition. I could write the convention of a T-Hose of Iowa theory of truth. I could take all those words, Leo. They're just words. And I could ingest them into an RDF truffle graph.
What is it that you're objecting to?
I'm not interested in analytical philosophy.
So you're not objecting
to have not been ratified or verified in computer science. I could get top of my coffee. I'll be right back. Sorry.
So you're not interested in objecting to anything. I didn't think so.
All right. So we got another $10 super chat from Halosha. Thank you. He says, "No, Mark. The linguistic argument is unassailable. Its context is key. You have to have a thou and an I. It's ultimately personal. Science.
I'm going to go get a citation from Matt. About linguistics, and I'm going to post it in the live chat. Keep an eye out. If I drop out, then put me back in.
All right. So, Mark, do you have a response to the super chat?
I'm not sure which linguistic argument he's referring to. Does anyone know what he's referring to? Is that the universe thing we're talking about, or you have to have a thou and an I? I mean,
Alicia, don't worry about. Hang on, Mark. Alicia, if you want to just tag me with another, you don't just do a super chat. Just expand this one for clarification on what you mean by linguistic argument. So Mark can respond, and
I don't understand. Science is the study of dead things. I mean, we study plenty of live things. Is that supposed to be a metaphor or some kind of?
I think it's an argument for dualism, Mark. That's what they were trying to imply, anyway.
Oh, maybe he's talking about that if you're using. Acknowledging, because Duvid mentioned something, if you're using language, you're acknowledging the Platonic ideals, which I don't think Platonic ideals are actually a thing. I think they are a...
Sorry, Mark, Duvid didn't actually state that. We didn't get that far before the argument went off on a rabbit trail.
Yeah, but I kind of got where he was going.
I think
I
didn't know whether he was implying idealism or dualism, but it was one or the other. You're right.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly not an idealist anyway. So, I'm not either. I think.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think
difficult to know because he didn't get to finish what he was saying. But there you go.
I don't think the linguistic argument is unassailable.
Franco is being ridiculous again. I reject God because I prayed for a snow day in high school one day but never got one. God is dead. You know, whenever I hear those kind of things from atheists, it's amazing how many on the Austin show, Austin atheist shows, they talk about that kind of stuff. Like, I prayed for blah blah blah. God didn't answer my prayer.
John, can I just cut you off for 10 seconds? I've had all my dogs baited since I've lived here. Lots of dogs. I've had 7 dogs baited by atheists. I've had so much evil crap fall upon my head. I've had stuff stolen, all sorts of things. Rumors spread around about me. Mate, atheists, any wonder? Like, I've got an atheist friend here who I really love, but all the rest of the atheists here, I hate them all. I mean, I'm not supposed to hate anyone as a Christian, but I hate them.
Yeah, I hate you too, you piece of shit.
All right.
I just said that I've got an atheist friend here who I love more than anything, but all the rest of them I hate because they're just evil dogs.
Evil dogs.
Have you met all the rest? Have you met all the rest of them?
Have you ever? I had all my dogs baited. All my dogs got baited and died. Let me give you an idea. Friends of mine. I've got a friend who's worth $15 billion net worth. A friend of mine's worth $15 billion net worth. Now let me tell you what's going to happen when we find out who baited our dogs. When I find out who baited them, mate, like I'll tell you, I have atheists are the most evil.
Okay, Jason, do not announce your actions, which you may or may not do.
It doesn't matter, John. It doesn't.
Jason, I do not want you to announce your plan for whatever it is. I want no knowledge. Okay.
That's fine. Let me finish.
I am unaware of.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
No.
It's on record. It's on record here at the police station. It's not something that you have to hide or whatever. When we find these people who have done this to our dogs, and they are atheists and they hate me because I'm a Christian, and they hated me because my missus was black, right? And they're white supremacists. I hate white supremacists more than you can ever imagine, and I'm white, and most of my family are white. I have had so much garbage heaped on me by these people. It doesn't matter what we say live, mate. Everything I said, John, I've said everywhere, to the police, to everyone. You know, the police here don't give a stuff.
Jason, we're not going to talk about violent action towards atheists, whether or not they have.
No, I'm talking about violent actions from atheists towards me. I've had 7 dogs baited because of who I am.
Jason, I understand this. I understand what you're saying. I'm saying that we do not need to be talking about any kind of revenge. Okay, I don't want to.
I'm not talking about revenge, mate.
Shut up.
Listen.
Jason, we're not just whoever's on needs to beat themselves. Jason, we are not going to discuss revenge and response, whether or not it's been made publicly available or not. It's not going to be discussed on my channel. Is the point that's being made? Okay.
Best to avoid violent threats and violence. Kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm really sorry to hear about your dogs, Jason. That's really harsh to have to go through.
Yes, and Jason, I'm about to bring you back in, Jason. But listen, I know a lot of the bad stuff that happened to you. I know this already, so I feel you. But we're not going to talk about that on the channel. Okay.
Okay, I am not. Okay, I won't mention revenge then. I'll just mention what's happened to us since then.
God.
Okay, let me see. I've already said it. I won't mention revenge. There's no revenge implied. Look. All I'm saying is, look, you don't understand the way the laws work in this country.
No, we don't care.
Jason, we're not. Listen, this topic is done. Okay, we're not just continuing on this at all. Okay, it's over. Okay, we can come back in, but we're not talking about that anymore. All right, we're moving on to something else. And
I'm in the same country as him.
I know. So. Where did I do with the? Dang it! Alicia had expanded the question or the point for your work, and I don't know where it went. Dang it!
Tasmania is the same country as me, Jason. I'm in Australia as well. Last I checked, Tasmania was part of Australia.
I do like the Tasmanian devil. If that helps change the mood. Genius, Tasmanian devil.
I'm in WA, Jason. Just letting you know, mate.
Oh, so you're in WA. So you're in the state where the Premier made a law. Now get this. The West Australian Premier made a law. No, wait a minute. Just let me say what the law he made. This is the law that was brought in under the Australian Constitution in their Parliament. Just let me say the law he made. Now, this West Australian Premier, he made a law that absolved all public servants of all crimes all the way into the past and all the way into the future. So basically, the law that he made in Western Australia, and our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, at the time, never said anything about it. He came out, and actually in Australia, the federal government has the power to override state laws, not like America. The federal government can make a law in Australia that can wipe out a state law. Now, they made a law in Western Australia that absolves all public servants, all politicians, all police, anyone that works for the public service of all crimes, all the way into the past and all the way into the future. Did you know that? Future. Did you know that? I can send you the Australian government link to that.
Sure, well, send it over and I'll have a look at it. But no, they didn't. They just made a law that. Well, it was just a slog.
I was going to ask you that. True? Is it true that New Zealanders? Is it true? Given that we've got a couple of Aussies here, is it true that New Zealanders don't believe in God less because more Australians have convictions? Is that true?
No, but I think
was a
New
joke.
Zealand is a more secular state. You know, I don't get those jokes. I always
Sorry, mate.
No, that's okay. That's all right. It's a story of my life, mate. Don't worry about it.
Do you know what,
no,
Mark?
no,
There was an ad in London in the Tube Underground from this Kiwi ads for Steinlager. It said, like Australians, New Zealanders have their convictions. It just said Steinlager. That's pretty good.
No, the joke there about convictions is actually because while New Zealand was started as a colony, Australia was started as a penal colony. So basically, England sent all of its convicts over to live in Australia, kind of thing. So, you know, like the rivalry between the USA and Canada and things like that. We've got one with New Zealand, and they like to say that we're all prisoners and convicts because, you know, that's where a lot of us came
Australians and
from.
Americans get on like nothing else. Americans and British, they don't like each other very much.
Well, I mean,
Okay. So who
That's
is?
not true.
I don't think anybody in the United States views Canada as competition.
Americans and Brits just like banter, and Americans are
Canada's
really good at
what,
banter.
pile
I
of
missed
shit.
that. I missed that, Maddox. What was that?
I said I don't think Americans really view Canadians as competition.
But there's not a friendly
No,
rivalry
they don't.
kind of
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
No. We're friendly. We're friendly with Canadians, and I like Canadians, but in no way, shape, form, or fashion do Americans view Canada as like competition.
Oh, that's not what I'm saying, because New Zealand isn't like, you know, if you look at it sort of financially or militarily, they're not competition for Australia. It's more, you know, their sports teams compete and, you know, they give each other crap, you know, and make jokes about the other one kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a little bit. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I think that applies to a lot of folks, though. Okay, real quick.
Absolutely.
Okay, so hang on.
Thanks for putting
So
up
we've
with
had.
me, man.
Oh, you're welcome, man.
I really
All right,
appreciate it. I know I'm a pain in the ass, and you're really tolerant, mate. You're an awesome. What do they call those people? The way you run this channel is really awesome, man. I mean, I know there's times you've gone off at me and yelled at me and cut me off and blocked me out and that, but I think it's all fair, man. And I think you're one of the best live shows on YouTube.
Well, you know, just pump me up, make me feel my ego.
Should.
I mean,
I'm not pumping you up. I'm pumping you up because I want you to start doing live interviews, mate, on the street.
No, I'm working
on balls, mate.
I'm working
balls, and you're not a little soft cock. You get out there and do live interviews, mate.
Well, that's not
Oh my god!
I'm working. Okay, real quick. We got 2 people who have joined us and haven't had a chance to speak yet. So
just gonna say, John, please don't approach people on the street with an erection, please. Just.
I mean, I don't plan on that.
Big bad mama told me to stop Jason, but I don't have the heart to. Keep going, Jason.
Okay, so Nunk, I know you've been on here before. What's how do I pronounce? What do you want to go by? I forget.
Just Nunk. It's fine.
Nunk. All right. Well, welcome to the stream. What's on your mind? And then after you talk, Alosha has joined us, been dropping super chats left and right, and I'm guessing they want to clarify with Mark what was the super chats were about. So go ahead, Nunk, then Alosha has the floor.
I don't really have anything on the mind to the whole political debate between Australia and New Zealand. Like, I'm from Germany. I have no idea what's going on there. So I don't know if you want to discuss philosophical questions. That's more my forte.
Yeah, we can get back into that here in a few minutes.
Hell yeah, brother.
Alosha, welcome to the stream. Thanks so much for all the super chats you've been dropping. Floor is yours. Do you want to, whatever's on your mind, go ahead. Or you and Mark can have back and forth for a few minutes, whichever you prefer.
Oh no, I'm surprised Mark and Jason haven't clarified the whole palm thing for the Americans.
The palm thing.
Palm.
Palm. Yeah, palm. Gotcha. Yeah.
No, just the whole linguistic argument. Martin Buber, Rosenstock UC. Just that.
Did you have a look at that linguistic origins link I posted in the side chat and in the main chat? Did you have a look at it?
No, I didn't, but I will.
Well, it's impossible for language to...
Jason, it's Alosha's turn. Everybody be quiet.
Okay,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
man. Sorry.
No, anyway, there's an I thou, there's the entire way that we gain knowledge. you're named, known, told yes and no. You're put in a position. You don't know yourself otherwise, and I think with the various religions, especially with divine revelation, that's how they come to know God. He makes statements. You need to take them seriously. Obviously, you can say, well, what about what about this one, that one, and another thing? But it's like, no, what about this religion? What about Christianity and what the Jews experience and all that? And you have to kind of, let's not just dilute this. Let's say, okay, let's deal with this one religion and not. Anyway, there's seems to be outside of that process to where these various peoples came into contact with God as they understand it. The way the Greeks approached it was we're going to develop this logic, and then we're going to put God kind of in a box. We're going to catch him in a butterfly net. There's being, and we have logic, and we're going to start playing with these verbs. And anyway, it ends up, I don't know, it just seems like people are kind of arguing past each other at that point. And that's all there is to it. And I think what's unassailable is that we just don't get to reality on a personal level, and we don't operate. And I think that's what Word of Comments was trying to get to in the final analysis in terms of trust. We just don't get to that place before we are at a personal level. And
I think well said, Alicia. Not just a personal level. So if you look at the latest studies in cognitive neuroscience in the brain, we've actually now can isolate the layers of where logic and reason in the brain are working. And reason is 4 levels deep. You start with instincts, which are precepts for intuition and inferences. We can perform these studies on the brain. And you can see even when it comes to rationalism and reasoning, the thing that's occurring is actually, first of all, behind real time, technically. It's running with a little lag. And it isn't primary. It has no primacy. But rationalism, since the Enlightenment, the age of reason, has said, I'm going to be a rational creature. Man is a rational mind inside a disembodied being of existence. But when you go about your normal life, you don't. I'm about to take my wife to the market. Nothing about this will be rational and reason. Reason will be there, but we know which market we're going to go to and how to navigate. But the instincts and the intuitions and everything that comes before it is a much richer description of experience. The rationalists, particularly in the atheist camp, and they argue with God, are going to presuppose the primacy of reason, and they're always going to scream, give me your evidence and give me your reason. But the real world doesn't operate like that at all, right? I don't rationalize most of my experiences today, right?
I don't think that's the case in all cases, Ralph. I really don't. Nobody's saying we can't use intuition, but what we're sort of saying is that, if you are going to the market and you've got to cross the road, what's the methodology that ensures that you're not hit by a car? And it's not intuition. It's gathering of evidence and analyzing that evidence rationally to see whether you can or cannot cross the road. That's what we're saying. But that doesn't mean to say you can't use intuition. We just don't when there are things that we need to know for sure. So you're bleeding your sort of preferences and your desires in with when you want to know an evaluation of reality. But I did want to talk to Alicia. Sorry if I mispronounced that. About sort of this unassailable linguistics argument, and I'm not quite sure how you're connecting it, because you said we don't get to reality on a personal level. And I'm wondering what you mean by that, like whether we do need to apply things as a collective in order to get to reality. Can you clarify what you mean by that?
Oh, no, I do mean that we do have to have personal knowledge to come to reality, and that gets situated by, at the very, very beginning with being named and placed into our society or who we are. And
so a sense of identity, is that what you're sort of saying?
Yeah, at the very beginning, but I think Word of Commerce comments is a little more eloquent than I am. And then it goes back. Go ahead.
Question there, Aisha, because I just wanted to ask whether you think that determination by a child or a baby of learning to say that it's an I, do you think that is done through deductive or inductive reasoning?
No, I don't think you can explain it either way. I think it's a spiritual thing, and I think it scales back to a metaphysical reality.
Right. Wouldn't that imply that it's deductive? If you're saying it's metaphysical.
Not necessarily.
I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It's really not necessarily.
I know it may not be necessarily, but would it imply it? It was the question.
If it was spiritual, and then this is the issue with the person of Christ, where, I mean, and then the earlier debate, it's like, guys, I don't know where I guess you kind of have to sort of do it, but I don't know how it really works. Where you've got where the Christians have this person, truth. Truth isn't an idea, it's not a concept, it's not an ideal, it's this person. And it's anchored back into the Trinity, and it's not really something you can kind of take apart and explode it into a bunch of pieces. That snarky comment, science is the study of dead things. I mean, you can pull everything apart, and you've got a bunch of parts, and you don't have this.
But House of Comment made a good point there, surely, when he said that this sense of or reason isn't the lowest level of understanding, right? There's this intuitional level.
Yeah, and I think
okay. So presumably, children or babies are coming from that intuitional level, and what I would like to know is, how is that intuition built up into reason?
I can comment on that briefly if you like. I'm not sure if you want, because if you look at studies of child development, so I'm particularly interested in, as a computer scientist, I'm particularly interested in the brain and brain studies. If you look at how children are brought up and raised, I raise my children, they go through certain qualitative stages in neuroplasticity of the development of a world model. Before they're 2, which is why you can't send them to nurseries, they only have a one world model. Their brain and their cortex can only see the world as one universe in which they're in there. The second stage, and this corresponds to the evolution of language within the brain as well, they get to the second stage world model where they can say, oh, I'm Billy and you're Sally. And then they can compete and fight with each other. So you socialize.
I'm just asking how they do that. How do you?
Yeah, but literally, it's almost the brain is wiring itself up in neuroplasticity, and the reason and the rationalization requires those other steps later. So first, they're just purely instinctive, right? They're instinctive and they're impulsive, and they use intuition, and they don't use reason or rationalism. You can't reason with a 3-year-old toddler. He doesn't get rationalism. It's not in him.
But how does God come into that?
How does it do that, though? I mean, my argument would be that it does that by repeating actions and learning through some kind of behavioral pattern.
Socialization is the way. So if you look at badly behaved children, that we socialize into giving them a kind of a context, and that's necessary for the healthy construction of the brain.
Again, so you're not quite getting. Sorry, House, you're not quite getting to the nub of what I'm asking here. The nub of what I'm asking is, how is that process happening? And I'm arguing that it's done through behavioral practices, repeated behavioral practices.
Yes, it is, because you can see the difference in treating bad children, right? The children have not been, let's say, socialized earlier well. They need to be re-socialized or rehabilitated. And they, for example, we would tend to prone more to impulsive, instinctive behaviors as opposed to reasoned behaviors. So reasoning seems to be a conditioning from neuroplasticity into the brain. Into the
Sorry. So that process, I mean, I think we're before reasoning still, but that process is one of induction, correct?
I think the word induction is being probably used a little, probably a bit tricky there, given all the meanings of the word induction, but I think it is being induced in the sense that, it's being induced in the sense that, they're being repeated conditioning.
A generalization, which we assume to be true.
Repeated conditioning and correction.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to hop out. All right, later, guys.
So Ayoshua, does that answer that question? When you said you were introducing God and Jesus at that point, can you see why an atheist may have a different viewpoint to say, well, that
Yeah,
actually what's going on there is a
yeah,
process of
because I've taught a lot of kids in Sunday
behavioral
school.
acclimatization.
And I've taught a lot of kids in Sunday school, and you notice that there's a certain age, typically between 5 to 8 or 6, where they can actually really take on the word and the message. If you do it before that, they actually can't comprehend it. And if you do it too late, you're actually combating the modern world, having given them messages, information that would be anti-God.
But Ralph, people manage to develop into very capable brain functionality without Sunday school or any training in theology at all. So how does that help with the outcome?
Only if you want to raise children in a Christian worldview, then it matters.
Agreed.
So if you don't want to raise children in Christian worldview, then they can be healthy atheists, they can be fully functioning members of society, atheists, but they won't be Christians. Right?
Agreed.
Well,
and again, the point being here, right, that it's that behavioral reliance on induction, okay, which is really at the heart of how people navigate through the world. Right, the same way babies turn into reasoning people is the same way that adults or young children turn into adults. It's through this
because I
process
think
of
a lot of it depends on the
behavioral acclimatization using induction. It's not through this process of pure logical reasoning, which has to be indoctrinated into, or you have to be indoctrinated into it.
Yeah, it's not rational. It's not a core clinical machine. Even though, so for example, I went to school that was a very old high school, and it was very, very structured and very rigorous. But nevertheless, even within such a context, we were given a broader sociological education. When you look back, obviously, when you're young, you didn't like it because it was disciplinarian, right? But if you look at it, reason by itself and coming at it at a rationalist point of view, it's not even good for raising children, even if you're an atheist.
I do definitely agree that it's in learning the arts of deduction or reason. In this case, as we're saying it, is the way that we shortcut ourselves to learning good morals and good behavior patterns.
There's there's a conflation. I think there's, with an atheist perspective, there's a conflation of the mind and the soul, and especially raising children. There's a huge aspect of faith letting them see beyond the horizon. You've got a unified mother and father, and there's something they don't understand, and there's a level of discipline you have to, an environment you have to kind of keep there, kind of a unified reality, and you have to express disgust or anger when they transgress or whatever. And I don't think there's really anything you can kind of reason your way into in terms of that, where they have to let go in a faith-based way and just accept, no, I need to not eat out of the trash can or stick my head in the urinal or whatever it is. And there's this, I think there's a spiritual level there that can't be addressed in that atheist paradigm, where they meet that reality, and then they say, they feel guilt and confrontation, guilt, repentance, etc., and they can come to knowledge only through that path, and they can't reason their way through it, or in inductive or deductive logic.
What about that is spiritual?
You're muted.
That was
sorry.
That was
sorry,
very hard. Go for it, Mark.
Well, I think that, I would push back against the whole spirituality aspect of being the origin point of some of those things. Like when you're talking about guilt and things like that, I think as an atheist, I would probably say that they sort of come from our basic senses of empathy and reciprocity, which we also see in animals. And I would posit a naturalistic explanation for those feelings. I think it would be with all the studies that are done of seeing this in animals and other not independent creatures, but social animals in general, basically only social animals, I think you'd have to somehow demonstrate that this spiritual origin actually exists.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, with animals, I mean, it's more of a, not a barter thing.
How do atoms exist and they're all just electromagnetic energy? How do they exist?
Well, that's not what atoms are.
Oh, really?
Yes, really.
Can you prove that there's tangible matter in an atom? You're
Yeah.
say quarks, right? You're going to say writing quarks, right?
Quarks and electrons. Yep, you're right.
Quarks.
Things
Well,
we've
there's writing
definitively
quarks.
measured and
Well,
understand
how
very,
about
very
the
well.
Quarks are pushing and pulling on each other with electromagnetic energy.
It's
and
not
there's
electromagnetic
no
energy.
actual...
Are you talking about the weak
So
nuclear
what they
force?
say is...
No, he's
so
not
what they
talking
say is
about.
if
I don't
you
know what
remove
he's
all
talking
the
about,
free space
but
and all the atoms in the
quarks.
human body, you
I
can
mean,
fit
quarks
only
do
the human body
interact via
inside of a grain of
electromagnetism,
dust.
but that's not
So
what holds
that
them together.
tangible matter,
I don't know what
if
he's
it's
talking
true,
about.
is less than a grain of dust.
And then he
Less than
just
a
like
grain of
keeps
dust in the whole
going
universe.
on, and like
Well,
it's
You've
making
never
no
read
Jason.
Edward Schrodinger's? You've never
Jason.
read anything about Edward Schrodinger?
Well, the funny
No.
thing is it's obvious you haven't, because his name isn't Edward Schrodinger. It's Edwin Schrodinger.
Oh,
So,
whatever. I got the name wrong, but you know what I mean,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah, because I actually know what I'm talking about. It's quite clear you
Oh, you know
don't.
what you're talking about.
Yes.
Mate, I can post a link to exactly what that guy says.
All right, hang on. So, Leo,
post a link.
Hang on, an accent. Like, I don't pronounce 90% of Americans do not pronounce Schrodinger in the way that you just did.
Well, it wasn't that. It was Edward.
I said Edward. Your whole point there. So your whole point there. Your whole point, Leo, was obviously a snide little.
No, that wasn't my point.
You literally said you didn't pronounce his name properly, therefore you.
I didn't say that.
But then he pronounced it in an American version of a German accent. I'm in Germany, and no one would pronounce Schrodinger that way either.
I mean, Leo, that was a very obvious attempt to put down Jason. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You can't even pronounce the name right.
That wasn't my intent.
Well, that's okay. To the panel, did that appear to be the intent of what Leo was saying?
Well, it might have appeared that way, but that wasn't my intent. So I don't think it really matters.
Bro, if you literally say you can't even pronounce his name right, it should be this. You don't know what you're talking about.
I don't understand why you're trying to debate me on this.
That's a very.
I'm telling you what my intent was. You don't get to
Leo, you don't get to just.
You don't get to decide my intent.
Dude, I don't really give a rat's ass about your intent. I'm going to interpret what you clearly said. And if anybody else says you don't know what you're talking about because you can't even pronounce this right, if that is not meant to mean you clearly are ignorant and you're so dumb you can't even pronounce the name right, I mean, nobody else, I mean, very, very small percentage of people are going to reach any other conclusion than that one, is that being your intent. And then when you're like, well, that wasn't my intent. Well, I mean, that's called, like, in most contexts, people that do that, when it's that blunt in what they did, it's usually attempt to, like, assuage thing and push things under the rug. But like, well, that's not what I really meant, when it's pretty freaking obvious that's what you meant. Now, you can deny it all day long, but it was pretty freaking obvious.
Well, maybe to you, but you don't get to decide what my intent on something was. I do, and that wasn't my intent. So if that came off that way to you, that's fine, but that wasn't my intent. Also, what you outlined as my argument, you didn't pronounce his name right, so you don't know what you're talking about. That wasn't the argument that I made. I didn't really make an argument there at all. So
no, it was an insult.
Yes, it was.
It was an insult. It's pretty. I'm quoting you.
What was the insult?
Okay, Leo, please don't play dumb. I know you're not dumb.
I'm not. You claimed it was an insult. So
Leo,
outline where.
Leo, you do this.
He just dodged.
He's trying to avoid talking about this subject because he knows
and you mute.
that talking about this subject really hurts evolutionists.
Well, I don't know what that has to do with it.
Leo, have you ever noticed as a trend that usually around this time of the night, you end up getting, like, put in the back, placed on mute? And it's because there's a trend. You go into Mr. like semantic bovine scatology mode, or attempting to end run people, or issuing some term and being like, do you know what this means? And if you can't tell me exactly what this means, give me a definition on the spot, then you don't know what the hell you're talking about, even if somebody is talking about something else. Which, oh wait, you did that with House of Comments already. And then now you're claiming that you didn't make a snide little put down, and that it wasn't your intent, when the language that you used made it pretty freaking clear that was your intent.
Well, but that's not. You keep saying your language made it clear, but then you're just misinterpreting what I meant. That's just what's happening.
Let me explain what Edward Schrodinger or Schrodinger or Dinger or Donger or Wanker.
I don't even know why we're
Let him explain
You're
what
the
he
one
said.
that you didn't
Go
care
on,
about.
mate. Explain it. Explain it. Just
explain. What is it that you want me to explain?
You just said I got Edward Schrodinger wrong,
Guys,
so you must know who he is. You must know what he's talking about.
Actually, yeah. It was, and see that it was that I was telling you that his name isn't Edward Schrodinger; it's Erwin Schrodinger. It was just a simple correction. I don't know why it's that big of a deal. I mean, if you look it up, I'm
let's
right
get
there.
off that. Now
That's what I've been trying to do.
Explain what he meant.
What he meant.
You obviously know his name, so you must know what he meant.
What he meant by what? He said a lot of things. Like what are you referring?
He said basically, if you blew up an atom to the size of a stadium, a football stadium, the nucleus would be the size of a peanut. And then what he said, if you removed all the free space of all the atoms on one person, you could enclose that person inside of a grain of dust. Not the size of a grain of dust, inside of a grain of dust. If you took out all the free space of every human being alive on Earth, you could contain them in less than a sugar cube. So now what he's basically saying is that there is some tangible matter there. I don't believe there is any, but what he's saying is that there's enough tangible matter in a human that if you removed all the free space out of their atoms, you could enclose them inside of a grain of dust. That's scientific fact, by the way, buddy. I mean, go and have a look.
Well, it's actually not.
The only comeback, no, wait a minute. The only comeback they've got to that is quarks have weight. Now, they can't see quarks. No. They can't see them, but they can measure that they have some sort of weird electromagnetic weight. Now, if you think about it, now think about it. Quarks pushing and pulling on each other would give them appearance of weight, wouldn't it? It would.
No.
Yes, it would.
No. Would you like me to explain?
How do you know it wouldn't?
Would you like me to? Are you gonna let me to explain, or are you just gonna keep going?
Okay.
Yeah. So quarks don't have weight at all. Weight isn't a property that quarks have. Quarks have mass.
Oh.
If you're talking about mass,
but not
and
weight.
you, when you say
How
no,
can you
so
have
first,
mass without
hold
weight?
on. I'm sorry, I haven't finished. Well, weight is a property of the strength of a gravitational field acting on some object that has mass. It's not mass. So weight and mass are not the same thing. This is undergraduate
That
level.
is an awesome description.
So anyway,
that description you just gave is one of the most awesome descriptions I've
I
ever heard.
haven't finished yet. So the force that holds quarks together into hadrons is not electromagnetism. It's the strong interactions. And Jason is actually correct. Most of the mass of the proton, about 99.4% of the mass of the proton, is a result of the energy contained in the gluon flux tubes that hold quarks together into hadrons. It's not actually the constituent.
Really?
Can I finish?
Can I finish?
Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish?
Everyone, this is a theory.
How
what
come?
he's saying, not a fact.
How come if like me or Mark like start stepping on people's toes, we get stopped, but when anybody else doesn't, they don't?
Well, Leo,
interesting. Anyway,
just a matter of being calm, I think.
And you know what, Leo? I actually did. I put Jason in the back. I put Duvid in the back. I put Bubbles Gun in the back multiple times. So I don't really
you know what, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry. You're right.
You're living in.
I can see on that. You're right. Anyway, yeah, well, so to Jason, I know this because it's extremely well defined mathematically, and
Really?
everything that's described in the mathematics we've observed thus far. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, Jason, I just
Okay,
have
so
a
the
question for you, mate.
mathematics is one. Wait a minute. Just let me ask him this. So the mathematics on mtDNA Eve, when they first
I have no idea
got
what
all
that
the
has to
wait, no,
do
no, just
with
wait
what
a
are you
second. I'll
talking about?
explain it to you. I'll explain it to you. The mathematics they got when they first got all the mutation rates, they were way too fast, and then they looked back and they found mtDNA Eve lived 6,000 years ago. Then they went away for 3 years because they knew that wasn't right, because they're evolutionists. They know that the Bible's not right. So then when they went away for 3 years, they got better data, better equipment, and they came back and then they calculated back and they said, well, mtDNA lived 6,500 years ago now. Now, we know that's not right. So then they put it on the back burner for 10 years. 10 years they put it on the back burner.
I'm sorry, where was the question? What was the question you had?
It's not a question. I'm telling you.
Well, I thought you said you had a question because Mark wanted to say something, I believe.
Okay, well, let me tell you. Then they put it on the back burner.
Oh, Jesus.
And I know you're trying to put me off on this because you don't want this coming out.
Well, I just don't understand how it's relevant to the discussion. I'm sorry.
It is relevant when you let me finish.
When's that gonna
mtDNA,
be?
when they spent 10 years, they did all these mathematical equations, right? And one mathematical equation got them back 500,000. Another one got them back 2 million. Another one got them back so many. They kept discarding all the equations until they got the one that got them back 150,000 to 200,000 years back to mtDNA Eve. Now, this is the point. What they did is they said, okay, the mutation rates today are way too fast. They're way too fast. So they must have been slower in the past. So they can't jump in a time machine and go back and take people's blood and DNA and test it. So what they said is it must have been slower because we know evolution is true and we know creation is wrong. So they came up with a mathematical equation. It took them 10 years to do it. That showed that mtDNA Eve lived 150,000 to 200,000 years ago. And we have all the citations from beginning to end of that I can show you. So everything you're saying is bull garbage. You're trying to talk about Edward Schroeder, whatever, Edwin or Ed whatever, Schrodinger.
Well, you're the one that brought him up, actually.
Yes, he must be wong. Well, let's look at it this way. Edward Schroeder...
Yeah, where's the connection between mitochondrial DNA and quantum mechanics? I'm so lost right now.
What I'm saying is they lie. They lie, mate. They lie.
Who lies?
Look at mtDNA Eve.
Wait, no. What is that?
Okay. Jason, calm down.
That mtDNA Eve lived 6,000 years ago, and they went away for 10 years and tried.
Calm down. Okay, the point that Jason is making is that just because there's supposedly the math has been derived, there's been many instances where the math has been redone until whatever the preceding assumptions are proven, quote unquote, in the formula that's found magically. Oh, well, in this variation, then what we've predicted is true. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it is. It's just, it's bias is the point that he's making.
Well, that's not the case in advanced particle physics, but I also outlined that it's not just that the mathematical equations say something, it's that literally every experiment we've been capable of doing conforms to that mathematics to the 12th to 18th decimal place. I mean, my God, the magnetic dipole moment of the electron, so I can't finish the point.
That wasn't the point that I was making.
Well, it was a response to that point. You're right.
Okay, yeah, Leo, Mark's about to talk. Okay, Leo, calm down. Okay, I was just paraphrasing the point that Jason was making, and now we're gonna move. Now we're gonna move on.
I was just responding to that.
Now it's Mark's turn. Go ahead.
Yeah. So just because we find an equation that fits doesn't mean we rely only on that. Like, for instance, they found that mathematically a multiverse hypothesis could fit the beginning of the universe. but that isn't theory because we need more than just the maths working to prove it, right? We need other evidence as well. But the question I really want to ask, Jason, was to do with your sort of, you don't think there's anything in particles at all, but there's the sort of Large Hadron Collider, which accelerates sort of protons and collides them, and we see what comes off, you know, what elementary particles sort of fly off this thing, discovered the Higgs boson and stuff like that. I was just wondering, like, what do you think they're colliding in that case? Is Jason still muted?
He is, yes. If he's trying to speak.
Well, Mark, can you just make the other point about how science focuses in over time, and then of course it's provisional? Could you just make that
theory
point?
Theory development? Yeah, that we start with models, and through time we refine the models to better fit the observations that we make and better
based on
mathematical descriptions and physical models and observations and experiments.
That's not what I'm getting at. Yeah,
well, then
based on evidence and data, which we then add to the models to refine the models to become. Yes, this is the important part of it, though.
Well, I wouldn't say it's any more important than like the mathematical theorization and stuff like that.
Well, I don't think the mathematical theory is going to stand up if the evidence contradicts it.
I mean, it really just depends on what we're looking at.
Obviously,
you have to remember there's theoretical physicists don't do experiments. Experimental physicists do, but a lot of what experimental physicists do is based on the theory that the theoretical physicists are developing. Theory, in this sense, meant to be the things that they're like theorizing that are going to be tested to see if they actually match up with observations.
I know you're very focused on the physics there, but.
It's not just physics.
I know
you're philosophy of science.
I know you're focused on the science in general there, but obviously he's bringing up things like the mitochondrial DNA mutation rates, right? Which have, as he correctly says,
but that was part of his point.
Changing over time due to more data and more accurate data being fitted into the model being reassessed, etc.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with that, but that misses. I think that just misses the point that Jason was making, as LPP already outlined. The point was that there are instances where there's been mathematical theorization, but it seems to have been slowly developed specifically to fit like some preconceived notion. And I was just outlining that's not how it works in particle physics.
Okay, but if you look at a broader point as well with this claims to truth, it's interesting that in the last 50 to 40 years, particularly the ERRs for most of the hard sciences have been consistently falling. 60-70% of most of the replication prices, the estimated replication rate for an experiment in science.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, yeah, I know what he's talking about.
If you don't know, then just listen and you might learn. So we look at the estimated replication rate of scientific experiments and studies. They've been consistently falling, initially in the weaker sciences, now in the hard sciences. So what we see is this idea that the peer review and replication is not being married up with the data. And looks again, I think I'm just looking at the ERR numbers. 87% of chemists.
Yeah, can you cite these numbers?
69% of physicists and 67% of engineers' research experiments were non-replicatable.
Yeah, so what's
the source? What's the source for this?
Science doesn't live in a vacuum, and the idea that perform an experiment with a hypothesis.
What's the source for this?
What's the source for it? The survey by Nature.
The what?
Yeah.
Survey in Nature magazine.
So I'll address this.
Can you put the link in the private chat?
So you can find it. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make, because I'm going to have to dash the market soon, is that even within this culture of science, this idea that somehow I perform an experiment is replicated, can it be replicated by peers, seems to have a new trend. And I believe, and I make my last point because I do have to go to the market, is that since Christian veracity and Christian truth and Christian fidelity was removed from science, we seem to have a fundamental corrosion in even the scientific principle methods as evidenced by the longitudinal data of the replication crisis. But thanks for having me. In a great panel. I must take my missus to the market. I hope you chaps have a great stream.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. You don't mind if I address that?
Have a good time.
How's the comments?
Yes, sir.
You are in Germany.
I'm from London, but I'm in Germany for a year or two. Yeah.
What on earth is going on with their energy policy?
I think that people are waking up to the fact that a globalist, atheist, materialistic war is going to be felt by the purses of the Germans. And there's one thing the Germans have in their tradition of Protestantism is frugalism. So the Germans are looking at prices. They're literally, the price of my oat milk has doubled, for example, in just literally 3 months. So you can see that there's a rising costs and prices being felt, and I believe that the German folk are getting a little bit concerned about paying for it. So the Germans don't want to pay for it.
So European history, eh? It's always blame the Germans.
What can we say, eh, Samos? The Germans. Not another time, mate. Not the third time.
Yeah, another time.
But
anyway, Mark, you were just going to respond to those.
Thanks,
Timos.
One thing one thing, house comments before you go.
Yes, sir.
That's a keen observation, because there's a danger of sliding back into that Greek pure deduction, and that might be what we're seeing here. And that's where, the lawyers of Bologna in the 11th century or 12th century started to get us out of that. No, it's a keen observation.
It's a fair comment observation, because literally I speak to a lot of German politicians as well, because of the work I do, actual politicians in the parliament. And if you look at the German zeitgeist and the way the Germans feel right now, when the Germans are very slow as a nation, they're very deliberating people, they're very reflective. But they see every time they get agitated, other nations should be concerned. And right now, for the first time in my life, I've seen an average 15 German Air Force flights a day flying over the skies of Berlin. And you never see anything really fly over. So clearly it's a warning sign, and the Brits will tell you that you've got to watch it when the Germans kick off, right? Because someone has to put them back in the box. So I think I'll leave it at that, because I don't want to derail this with some German politics. God bless everyone. Have a great day.
Appreciate it. Comments. Have a good one. Let's let him get on to take care of the wife before he has to be a diplomat. Or he has to be a diplomat to her.
Mark, science
replication studies. So
before we move on, I just wanted to make a comment. So I say climate change is a hoax. All right, thank you.
Okay. So replication studies are basically ones that is not the first experimental methodology done. It's basically somebody doing the same thing again. Now, there is a problem in science where the fame and the prestige is not given to those people that repeat a study, right? So if you're the first person to find something, you get a lot more out of it as far as being heralded as a great scientific mind than repeating somebody else's experiments. Now, the thing that the statistics are sort of, House of Commons is saying that doesn't mean it's not being tested. It means that it ought to get more testing, and they're aware of it, and it's being addressed. I don't see his sort of slippery slope, we're going to fall back to pure deduction. Not at all. And it's mostly small stuff, like very, very small stuff. If something is very significant, like you're talking about experiments on evolution or experiments with particle interactions and things like that, they're doing replication studies. It's usually smaller stuff like is wine good for you and things like that they're not getting replication studies on, because it isn't sort of cutting edge science. It's more sort of pop culture science.
So what you're saying,
can I speak to that quickly, Mark?
Yeah, sure.
What you're saying, let me say something. What you're saying is citations are pretty accurate, right? So they're pretty accurate. I agree with you, but it's the interpretation of the data. It's the worldview that interprets the data. Interprets the data. You know what I mean? If we use, we mostly use secular citations because the data is good that they do, most of it, almost all of it. It's just the worldview that interprets it that's wrong.
So to speak, go ahead, Mark.
Secular doesn't mean anti-God. It just means no religious influence.
Yeah, I'm talking about evolutionist citations then. Okay, let's say evolutionist citations.
Okay, but I mean, secular doesn't mean that you. I mean, there's plenty of scientists that believe in evolution and still are theists. They still believe in God. It's just not something that
they're
comes into
heretics.
secular.
They're bearing false witness against God. They're heretics. So go on about that all you like. I'm talking about secular citations from evolutionists themselves, not from theistic bearing false witness against God are Christians.
Right. I'm not sure what your point is. I'm sorry, Jason.
I wouldn't dig. I wouldn't dig him.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
Leo,
just.
go ahead.
You wonder why
Jesus
I say
Christ.
bearing false witness against God.
Nobody
Is that
cares.
why
We don't wonder. We know exactly why.
We don't care. We really
You
don't
think
care.
exactly why. Okay.
You,
tell
you
me
think
then.
evolution is false,
Jesus
and
fucking
therefore any Christian
Christ.
which believes in evolution is going against God's will. That's why. That's why you think
Yes.
that.
Yes, I do. I believe they're bearing false witness against the Lord.
How much longer are we going to do this?
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
Well, that's okay. That's all right.
Where in the Bible does it say that?
Nobody cares.
I don't know.
No one's arguing with you, Jason. You believe that? That's
13
fine.
billion years.
Nobody cares. Anyway, speaking to what Mark said, it's just like everybody says, oh, the Higgs boson was discovered on July 4th, 2012. Actually, no, it was initially discovered back in October of 2011. It wasn't confirmed to, I think, like 5 sigma is what it's like 4 or 5 sigma, I think is what they eventually got. It wasn't confirmed to that level until July 4th, 2012.
Is that the numbers?
So
Is that the numbers we put in front of your eyes that you believe? Is that the numbers we put in front of your eyes?
So that plays, Mark, to the point that you were making about this replication with
Wait, what were the numbers they said? What were the numbers they told you that you believe?
If I could finish the point, if I could finish the
Wait, what were
point,
the numbers that they made up that you believe?
if I could finish the point, if I could finish the point.
Can you repeat the numbers you made up?
That goes to your point, Mark, that when it comes to serious thing, because you got to remember the Higgs boson was predicted like 50 years before it was finally discovered. So, and when it was the very firstly discovered is not when they actually announced its discovery. They didn't announce its discovery until they had confirmed those original observations to an extremely significant degree of mathematical accuracy and observation.
Why do they believe the Higgs boson proves evolution? Just say that, please.
What numbers?
I can't hear two people at the same time. I'm sorry.
Why do they believe the Higgs boson proves evolution? Why?
What the fuck does evolution have to do with the Higgs boson, dude?
Now, when they do you remember when they send things around the super collider and they create matter out of nothing?
I don't
have
even
you
know.
ever heard of that? Listen, have you ever?
No,
heard
I've never heard of a particle collider. What does it do?
Have you never heard of the particle collider when they send particles around? When the particles collide, for a split second, they'll create gold particles that weren't there before. And they say, well, that is proof. That is proof that evolution can happen.
No particle physicist says anything about evolution because they don't care about evolution. That's why they're particle physicists.
Oh, they don't? Really? So when they...
Really? Yes, really.
But just tell me this. Did they smash particles into each other and create matter that wasn't a part of those particles? I know they did, but go on.
Of course,
did they or not? Yes,
well, it depends on exactly what you mean, because the energy between the particles just shifts to different particular fields. Like
exactly.
Like anybody that understands E equals MC squared understands how this
occurs.
occurs.
They're not creating something that wasn't there.
Of course, nobody said they did.
That's exactly right, but that's the
way
nobody
said they did.
Portray it.
Nobody cares what evolutionists say about particle physics. But
the internet evolutionists portray that as
a
scientific fact.
I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say. They're stupid. I don't care what they say.
That there's no way to create elements.
Well,
I never said
that. Have you heard of Proton 21 Laboratory?
Now, notice when you say fact,
have you signed
notice when you said
21?
Noticed when you said fact, you used the word scientific before it.
Have you heard of the Proton 21 Laboratory? Have you heard of that? They've done the test. They've done this test 5,000 times all over the world, repeated in different laboratories.
Which test?
What they did is they put a high amount of energy into a small particle, and they produced all of the elements of the periodic table. Some of them that weren't even there. Now wait a minute.
That's not possible.
That's not how that works.
No, well that's happened. I'm going to post the link now.
Yeah, if you could get me a link to that.
Go ahead, please.
Now wait a minute. Let me tell you before I post the link. Before you make a fool out of yourself, because this experiment was repeated 5,000 times. 5,000 times all
Can I
around
have the
the
link,
world.
please? Can I have the
Okay.
link?
Yeah,
Please?
oh, I've got to put it up. Don't you worry.
Thank you
Oh,
very
that's
much.
good.
I
5,000
appreciate it.
problem at
times.
all.
Now, did you know that
Could you stop shouting? It would really
that
appreciate. My ears
particles
would really
above iron
appreciate it.
can't be created from the sun or
You muted
Wait,
yourself.
can I make a
Jason.
point? Can I make a
Go
point
ahead.
about the particle collider? It
Sure.
seems to me like scientists have
I'm
become.
going to post this Proton 21 link
Go ahead
now.
and do that.
Yeah,
I'm
Somebody's
probably
I'd be
going to drop
interested
out.
to
I'm
hear.
going to
I'd
post
be
it both
interested
in
to
the
see that.
live chat and in the side chat.
That's
I'm
great.
silly,
You
I'm gonna
you
get
can
it.
do that. You don't have to tell us you're going to do that. Go
We're
ahead.
looking
Whoever
for
was
it.
speaking.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment about this Higgs boson particle. I'm someone who's inherently skeptical of almost anything these so-called just scientists in general claim, because they're always trying to get more research funding and money and become the next Nobel
Why?
Prize winner.
Sure.
So when they make a claim that they so-called discovered or
Oh,
isolated,
even Erica,
isolated.
Gutsy Gibbon. Gutsy
Can
Gibbon
you stop?
even
Can you
admitted,
stop,
she said,
Jason?
I didn't
Jason.
know
Jason.
this
I
stuff.
was about. I was actually
Moderators.
about to- Yeah, I was about to finish.
I love you,
just
Mark.
wanted to say, when they make claims like they've isolated to such and such a degree of confirmed accuracy, I almost disregard it. They've become a priest class, and we're just supposed to trust that they've accomplished this. I don't know why we should do that.
Yeah, so you don't really have an objection to the data or anything. You don't really understand it.
I don't know. I don't think the data. Why should I believe their data? What?
Why shouldn't you?
Because they're the
I mean,
only
are you a
ones.
physicist?
Okay,
There's
so
a scientific facility in the middle of Europe, and there's only a small number of people who understand how any of it works, and we're just supposed to accept the garbage they throw at us as unquestionable.
Well, in terms of what is it garbage? What do you mean by garbage?
All right, okay. So I'm looking at the survey that House of Comments was referring to earlier from Nature. Have you failed to reproduce an experiment? Chemistry looks like almost 90% have tried to reproduce somebody else's experiment and failed. Biology looks like it's 78%, and that 77, 78. Physics and engineering looks like just under 70. Medicine, pretty close, same. Earth and environment, 63 or 64, somewhere in there. It's a bar chart. Other, a little over 60%. So it would appear that there's quite a bit of failure to reproduce. So in that context, if you're being unable to reproduce something that's published, then I mean, and then over here. So what factors contributed to irreproducible research? Let's see. The top one is selective reporting, pressure to publish, low statistical power, or poor analysis, not replicated enough in original lab, insufficient oversight and mentoring, methods code unavailable, poor experimental design, raw data not available from original lab, fraud, fraud, 40%, insufficient peer reviews, about 38%.
Can we get a link to this? Because I still don't see one.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit confused. Is this a survey of scientists that
I just put the link in, mate. The Proton 21.
We're not talking about you,
link.
Jason. We're not talking about you.
Sorry, man.
This is directly. This is from Nature. Is there a reproducibility crisis? It's a PDF.
Because I think I've read that,
seems
and I
to
think
be
a lot of people said that like this is just really bad science. Like this is
from Nature, Volume 533, 26th of May, 2016.
But that seems to be a trend. James Lindsay submitting a fraudulent paper about rape culture in dog parks in Portland, as a goof. And wasn't there just something that came out with the Alzheimer's research where that had been kind of waylaid with the samples they were using or something? But it was, anyway, just that seems to be a trend.
There was
I do concede. I'll just say something quickly. I do concede that 2016, and we're aware that there's a problem with reproducibility, and this seems to be this is a questionnaire on have you had a paper not reproduced, basically, which, yeah, we know there's a problem there. It doesn't mean that studies aren't being done. It means that we need to do more work on replication studies.
The problem is it's all theoretical research, stuff that's going to be hard to reproduce because we don't have the...
Hang on. What the hell do you mean theoretical research? It's chemistry, biology, physics and engineering, medicine, earth and environment, and other. Those are things okay, so what is...
Like
so if
string theory.
Dude, if you're reproducing...
Want an answer?
Dude, shut the fuck up.
I guess not.
Good Lord. In the context we're talking about here, it's all of them, okay, are having issues, literally greater than 60% are having issues with reproducing things that are peer-reviewed. So the whole macro point of all of this is the level of dogmatic worship that you guys give to the peer-reviewed papers and the current consensus and all that kind of stuff. If no less than 60% of it's having issues with, regardless of field, and some of them all up in the 80% range, or people aren't being able to reproduce things that are getting peer-reviewed, I mean, what does that tell you about the level of trust that should be given to the general consensuses that are put forth and the dogmatic positions of the current status quo paradigms that keep magically having to metamorphosize either when they get called out or, turns out they were wrong on this. And it's intriguingly, turns out what we thought was true and XYZ dogma has been flipped on its head. I mean, that happens all the freaking time. But in the interim between the formation of the dogmatic position and the rejection of it, or the overturning of it, in between there, everybody wants to be like, well, anybody who disagrees with what's the current consensus doesn't understand it, or is just wrong, or out to lunch, uneducated, blah 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 blah. Even if it's like regardless of what their own that person's credibility is. I mean, it could be a PhD who disagrees with the status quo, and they're being ostracized and being ousted for challenging the status quo. I mean, I don't understand how you guys don't see this. Like, this is so obvious.
I'd like to address that actually, because the problem is that it makes it sound, and this might not be your intention, John, but it makes it sound like 80% or 60% of papers haven't been reproduced, kind of thing, and that's just not true. The questionnaire was, have you failed to reproduce an experiment, and it's saying that a large number of scientists have actually missed reproducing an experiment, but considering the amount that they do, it's not sort of saying, hey, 80% of things just aren't reproduced. And it's usually for very, very trivial and like Leo was saying, theoretical stuff. So this sort of idea that, well, we can just throw science out because it's having problems with replication. I don't know what you're going to replace.
You're talking about replication. I've got some awesome view on replication.
I don't know why we would sort of listen to somebody on the fringe of science with sort of a opinion that nobody agrees with over what the consensus says. Because when you do that, who do you listen to then?
Okay, so
Mark,
can I make a point on this?
Mark, once
I just
again,
want to respond to this guy with homochiral and all sorts of stuff. It's going to blow his head off.
Jason,
mate,
we're not doing that right now. We're not doing that right now. I'm too tired.
Just wait a minute, mate.
Jason, I am about to end the freaking stream because I am tired as heck. I'm getting very irritated, and I got to go to sleep. Okay, so
well, let me have a say after
we're done.
Finish, then.
We're done. We're done with this stream. Okay, the stream is over. I am tired.
Just let me have one say before we.
Oh my god, dude! I don't know how many times I have to say we're done. Okay. This stream is over. Everybody, have a great night. I am exhausted.
Thank you, John. Have a good night.
Yeah, you guys. Hey, good conversation.
It's been my first stream.
Climate change is a hoax.
It's been a bit up. It's been a bit down. It's been a bit mad. It's been a bit sane. But that's life, isn't it?
All right, so
That's
I'm wrapping
life.
up. All right, so I'm wrapping up now, folks in the audience. Thanks so much for spending time with us and hanging out and taking part in the surveys, joining the streams. Thanks to everybody on the panel who came on in and shared their thoughts. Glad we had some good dumpster fire and some good conversation overall. But regardless of what side of the fence you're on, make sure that you use the brain power that you have, your critical thinking skills, and do real analysis. Go down the rabbit holes. Don't just accept consensus, because in my opinion, that's just freaking stupid. It's time for people to use their own brain power and the access to data that we have and go and do your own analysis. You know, it doesn't mean you won't reach the conclusion that quote unquote experts have reached, but you should at least go and try and figure out if it seems remotely valid from the macro view. If you have an IQ above freaking dumbass, you should be able to go and do some baseline investigation for yourself. Go read books, whether or not it's ones you agree with or disagree with, and then just be like, I think their argument is not true. But if you just refuse to actually go and even investigate for yourself, then why the fuck do you even have opinions on these things? It just blows me away. I don't understand why people do this. But anyway, I'm enough. Good night, everybody. I haven't had enough sleep. Peace out.
Live long and prosper.